3, 2, Hello, Pete Dominick. How are you, buddy?
Hey, Joe Rogan.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you. Psyched to be here. Psyched to be in California. Psyched to be sitting across from you.
Psyched to have you. You're a free man now. You've escaped yourself from the shackles of satellite radio.
The shackles of corporate media.
Yeah, man. That's the thing about dedicating so much time to a company like that. They can just get rid of you, and then you don't have a connection to all those fans. You have to reestablish a connection.
It's been an amazing experience in the last, 4 weeks since it happened to try to... First of all, I watched my funeral play out publicly because I had a huge community of listeners for 12 years that I created,
right,
that I was trying to respond to all of them. And you can't say... I still can't share like certain details, right?
How much time did they give you before the show was ended?
The show, basically, they told me after the show that was the last show, and then they let me have like a... they said I could do a last show, but instead I was just like, let me just record a message. I don't want to
So you didn't know until the day of?
I had a pretty good idea.
Do they have ratings?
I don't think so. If they did, I think I'd probably be in pretty good shape. I mean, like, it's a long story, but the show I was doing was pretty special. Like, it was really helping people, and we were enlightening. It's kind of like what you do here. I mean, that's why I love what you do here. People learn, they get enlightened, they get entertained. You make people better people through this show. The contribution that you make, that's what I was doing. We were 3 hours every day talking about issues, talking about struggles that people are having, and it was rewarding and challenging and satisfying, and I had total editorial control. So, I really can't complain. 12 years is pretty...
Do they know, though, how many people are listening to any given show?
Not that I ever know. Not that it was ever shown to me. And
see, that is a weird thing. That's a thing that you have with Netflix as well. Like if you do a special with Netflix and they go, we really like it. It's great.
But they don't share it with you.
Yeah. And you go, well, how are the ratings? They go, we're really happy. Well, what does that mean? We're really, really happy.
That's like when you first started doing comedy and you came off stage and your friends would be like, you looked confident.
No, it's worse than that because business decisions can be made based on what kind of downloads you're getting. Right? If Netflix says, hey, 4 million people downloaded your comedy special, they really loved it, we're really happy, let's do another one. It doesn't
make any sense for the company to have the information and the host not to have the information. Why wouldn't you share it so that everybody has...
They don't want you to bargain with them.
Well,
they don't want you to negotiate.
Yeah. Well, the best thing about being fired is you don't have to worry about being fired.
Yes.
And so you can do your own thing. And increasingly, I think people are taking advantage of that. Like if you're at a network, you have to have 1 million people listening or watching to keep the ratings up to sell advertising, and you're only making just so much money. If you launch your own thing the way you have and so many other people have, you're gambling with everything, which is what I'm doing now with podcasting, which is really an original thing to do, and a very difficult way to make money. But if you're good, then you control it all.
Yeah, you can do it. It's like if you've done a serious show and you developed an audience, and that's something you definitely did do.
3 hours live every day.
You can definitely do the same thing on a podcast. You just have to.
Right.
No, you can. It's like
my family's relying on it.
Well, you have comedy too.
Yeah,
but you absolutely can do it, and it's just one of those things where I see people doing the corporate route. And I'm like, man, I get how you needed to do that 15 years ago. You don't need to do that now. That's a bad decision now. Where it was a good decision. Like, hey, you got a serious gig 15 years ago. Like, wow, that's awesome.
I think you're absolutely right. It's terrifying. There's always pros and cons. You work for a company, no matter what you do. You're working for somebody. You have a place to go. They control all of the, in our case, in media's case, the promotion, the marketing, the legal. Yeah. They hire producers to work for you and so on. And so there's a certain level of comfort there. But at the same time, you got to answer to these people. You got to deal with these people. And frankly, you're more talented than a lot of the people that you're working with. And you have all these ideas and these inspirations. And, they're either going to say yes or no to them. And when you're on your own, you just put the wheels on them and go.
Yeah. Well, I remember last time I went to Sirius offices, went to the studios. I was upstairs and I was like, there's too much money here. This costs too much money. Like, there's too many people here. You see these fucking people wearing suits. I'm like, what does that guy do? Yeah. I guarantee you he doesn't do fuck all. That guy doesn't have anything to do with whether or not this show's any good. And all you have to do is press a button and get it out there. So there's all these people making decisions about, well, we got marketing and this and that, and we're going to make sure we hit the right demographic.
I feel like that's the way. I've worked at CNN, I worked at MSNBC, I worked at Fox. I feel like that's corporate media or corporate America, where you have to wonder how much work and how much value each person is bringing to whatever their job is. I always want to know, but
they're goofy. Sirius is very goofy. They offered me a great deal. 0 money.
Really?
0.
I feel like you might have told me that before.
0 money. It's the most hilarious deal ever. We'll put your show on the air, and we'll give you 0. Like, oh, that sounds good.
I don't even know. When was that? I mean, at that point.
Fucking recently.
Really?
Yeah. They're hilarious.
What did you do?
I didn't do anything. I don't talk to anybody. I mean, it's all done through managers and agents, and I say no to everything. So it was easy to say no to it.
I always did everything directly myself.
I could never. A terrible idea.
I could never allow somebody. I never felt like anybody could sell me the way I could sell myself.
Oh, dude! Then you have to think about selling yourself, and you can't. It takes the way this is. I mean, for people listening to this podcast regularly, I'm sorry. I apologize for repeating myself, but the way I look at everything, and this is something I've done really cultivated over the last 10 years, but really specifically focused on over the last couple, is I look at thinking as bandwidth. I only say if you have 100 units of thinking, whatever the fuck you have to, what you're involved in to have this negotiation, or sell yourself to this and sell yourself to that, and talk about this, and and pitch your ideas to this person and that person. That's taking away time that you could be working on your other shit.
Creating.
I don't have any time for that. I have 0 time. I allocate 0 bandwidth for selling myself, 0 bandwidth for doing other people's shit.
But have you always done that? Were you that way at the start? Because I mean, you're so big now, and anybody can understand that you can do that.
I never sold myself. I always had an agent and a manager.
Really?
I've had the same manager since I was an open micer.
Really?
Yeah.
Who?
Jeff Sussman.
Oh wow, I know Jeff Sussman. Yeah, wow. Huh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You're a loyal guy too.
Well, he's awesome, and he's family, and we've been together since 1990.
Yeah, I feel that way about my agent too. But I just Conan Smith. He's one of the few guys I met in this business that I really always liked, and he didn't seem like he's part of this business, but he'd always be like, "What's next?" And I'd always say tomorrow's show, because every 3-hour live show we talked about everything from tax policy to depression to environmentalism to anything, politics, parenting. And so it was really challenging to do that and to prepare for all these interviews with these smart people. And then I wanted to go home and be with my girls. Like I had an amazing work-life balance, and I feel like most people never find that. They never understand it. I found it, and I kept it for a really long time, which is what's scary to not have that. I've been working my ass off since the day I left SiriusXM and went right into a meeting, and have been on the phone ever since. Reached out to you and everybody I knew. I said, "Hey, what can I do?" But it's not balance. I haven't seen my girls, I haven't seen my garden. So I'm excited to hopefully get back to that, to some semblance of that. But most people don't have that, and I think finding. Because you get so ambitious, especially as a guy, I feel like, if you're a breadwinner especially, it's just work, support your family. If you've got a family, there's ego, there's money, and you just keep going. But then you realize there's got to be enough. You have to, in my opinion, you have to have an idea of enough. And I got there. And that's when I just would work, and then I would shut that down. I would still doing as much comedy as I could, but that definitely fell by the wayside, because the show, it was up at 4:30 in the morning. I was done by 2, and then I turned it off.
Well, the good thing is you can do your show. If you do a podcast, you could do it from wherever you live.
Right.
You can do it close by. You can either rent an office space, or you could do it in your fucking garage. You could do it anywhere, especially when your kids are at school. You could do it.
Yep.
You could do it on your terms. You could bank a couple of them, do 2 or 3 in a day, and then take days off.
Yeah.
But the most important thing, I think, is that you stay independent. We were just talking about that out there, because there's going to be a bunch of bozos that want you to join their network.
Oh, they're calling.
Yeah, they take a big chunk.
I don't know what the offers are. I don't know what the deals are. But it's like, why? Why? I just started doing this podcast.
You've already been through what that is.
I've got a great community of listeners who are like family to me. They've all been so supportive. You're like, let me just try to test that out.
Definitely test that out. How active are you on social media?
I try to be as active as I can. I'm not great at it.
Well,
I don't
that's
love
important
it.
though that you have some sort of engagement so you can tell people where you're going.
Yeah, definitely doing that. But
I mean, you don't want to be too wrapped up in it because again, bandwidth, it's going to suck up a lot of your time. And
right.
For a lot of people, it's a giant distraction.
Yeah, I don't. That's why I feel, when I say I'm not that good at it, it's because I feel like it's a distraction. It seems like as a creative person, it's interesting. It's an interesting outlet, and there's a lot of creative people who are great on Twitter. But I don't think in terms of what's a great tweet, or I should tweet right now, or put this up on Facebook. Comics artists do this because they love to create. They love to perform. They don't love to promote what they're doing. Nobody really likes that. Some people do, and some people are great at it, but it's usually not why you get into it. At the same time, if you don't do it, I mean, there's a lot of great comics who don't promote themselves, and there's a lot of bad comics, if we're talking about comedians, if we're talking about any performer, who are great at promoting themselves.
Right.
And I fall somewhere in between. Yeah.
People that are really good at promoting usually are not that good.
Because they spend so much time promoting, and they're trying to get famous and trying to get successful, as opposed to doing the work, writing the jokes, performing.
They're also super conscious of how they appear to people. They're super conscious and like they're trying to cultivate an image. They're trying very hard at that.
I can't be bothered with that.
It's not good for you.
I mean, I know it works, but I can't.
To go back to like what your deal was at Sirius, like when you were there, like so they don't give you any indication of what kind of numbers you're pulling in.
Not really.
Any indication of how many people are listening to your show?
It was hard to know. And you see the phone volume, you see the phones lock up, you see, social media is not really a good measurement because the vast majority...
Were you getting people to follow you? Were you saying on the show, hey, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram?
But what's interesting, I don't want to disparage SiriusXM, not because they gave me a good, exit deal, I guess, but because it almost seems... inauthentic because they gave me 5 contracts, which created an amazing life and an amazing community. Like, I'm so grateful to what I had there. But yes, certainly the problem, I suppose, is you're behind this firewall. Like this morning, one of my best friends lives in Australia, and he's like, yeah, I listen to Joe Rogan. I listen to Rachel Maddow's podcast. Like, they don't have MSNBC there. Right. They can't get SiriusXM necessarily. You can, I guess, online. The point is, if you're behind that, you're mostly in the car. Right. And I think what I'm trying to say is it's skewed to like 50, 60-year-old affluent men who are in cars, which I was psyched to have every one of them. But I would love to have a lot of young people. Yeah. I'm staying out here with my cousin, and his son is 18, and he found out I was doing the Joe Rogan show, and he's flipping out. But he didn't know what I did at SiriusXM.
I hate to say this because I'm thankful that Sirius put on Howard and Opie and Anthony and all these comics they had on over the years, but you're better off without it. It's not where the future is. The future is not in satellite radio. It's just not. It sucks. You go under tunnels, it cuts out. It cuts. I mean, it's dumb. It's a fucking dumb way. I mean, you can download an entire 3-hour show in seconds.
Yep.
If you have a podcast and you get it on Spotify or whatever, you download the whole fucking thing right before a plane ride in the airport. You're in the airport and you can go, oh, hey, there's a new Artie Lang podcast. Beep. Yep. Download it. While you're fucking waiting for your gate to be called, you have the podcast, you get on the 3-hour flight, you listen to the whole goddamn thing. It's easy.
What's interesting is I'm really curious to see what you think, but going from live radio and constant interaction with callers, which I love.
You can do that.
To podcasting and just being there alone with the mic and a guest.
No, you can do that. You can.
I'm told I can.
Callers.
I'm told I can go live. I haven't figured it out yet.
You can.
I got a great group of people that are working with me. Amazing people have come out of the crowd. The greatest thing has been how people have shown up. Like people from my life, like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, phone just ringing, text just coming in. No, I haven't taught you, and saying kind of just what you're saying. You're better off. One door closes, but more importantly, just people talking about how you changed their life and how they can't wait to see what you do next is an amazing, amazing feeling. Like if you do that with one person, your cup is full. Yeah. To have an audience of people doing that for 12 years, it's overwhelming joy and satisfaction to be able to look at my daughters and be like, no matter what happens next, what I got to do there and what I did do there on so many tough issues and helped so many people, that's it, man. I could die. Great. I could die right now and be happy.
Don't die.
It would be good for me to do it on the show, though.
You have a nice past, which is wonderful. But the thing about scary things and the thing about this is that it's an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity to do something There's an opportunity to stretch your wings, to really take a chance, and that's how you grow.
And I appreciate you saying that, and I'm on that same wavelength. And I'm a guy who thrives in these situations. Like I've taken advantage of every room I've been in. I've never been the best comic, the best. I've never been the best at anything, but I've always been gritty. I've always worked as hard, if not harder, than anybody. And now it's interesting because I've never been in this type of situation with a family. You know, that's different when you're single and you're young.
Right.
But I was working that hard and making no excuses, and back then doing no drugs, not drinking, everything. It was just about my career and being a good person. I thought if I was a good person, that mattered. And to come to find out, being a good person was the best form of currency. Everybody competing and trying to kill other people in our business or in any other business, to me, I have no interest in that and no attraction to those people. All I want to do is help people, not think, just for purposes of altruism, not to be virtuous, just because, same reason you are. Being kind is the way to be, not putting a knife in someone's back. And when the show ended, it was amazing because people started tweeting things that I had done that I never thought would become public. They were private things. They weren't for, and it was just like days and days of people. You know, I used to do a segment every week called Stand Up with a Veteran for veterans, and like this veterans community came out strong. They're like, "What? They let you go? You did so much for us." And I was like,
well, I think it's a dying company. I don't think you should dwell on all this. I mean, it's just a dying company, and now you have an opportunity. I mean, it's great that you did all these good things. It's great.
I hope. I don't mean to sound negative. I don't mean to sound like I'm dwelling on it. I mean to say, it was an amazing experience that was afforded to me. I leveraged it. I took advantage of it. I'm really excited. Every day I wake up now, just ideas, hammering, phone calls.
While you were doing the show, were you under any sort of exclusive thing where you couldn't do anything on the internet?
Right.
You
right.
were? Yeah.
Okay. I mean, yeah, pretty much. We couldn't do a podcast. It was direct. No, that was direct competition.
Yeah, because do you remember when Anthony from Opie and Anthony Cumia had Live from the Compound?
Of course.
He was doing this
Was that
thing.
overlapping with Sirius?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
That's why I started my podcast.
Because
100%. Because he had a studio in his basement where he's doing karaoke holding a machine gun. And he was drunk. And I was like, what?
Was
you
it
could
loaded?
do that. Oh, I don't know. It's Anthony. I'm sure it was loaded.
Yeah.
He's fucking crazy.
I know. I always had a great relationship with him, though.
I love that guy.
Yeah, he's one of the funniest guys. He liked me because we agreed on nothing, but we got along.
But he's a genius. I mean, he really is like...
He's a pretty smart dude.
The way he thinks and talks about things, agree with him or don't agree with him, he's a very entertaining guy. I love doing radio with him. And he had this basement setup where he had a green screen, and
Yes, I remember that.
Like a real production table and real production mics, and he spent all this money on like really high-end stuff. And he and I had a conversation. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm just fucking around. I'm having fun. And I was like, wow. I remember thinking about it, going, I need to do something like that. And when me and my friend Red Band, when we started it, we just used a laptop. But I remember thinking about what he had set up. So we were just doing like answering questions, talking to people on, like, I forget what it was. I guess it was Twitter. It's 2009. It'll be 10 years next month.
It's awesome, man. Look at you.
The inspiration was Opie and Anthony first because their show was like just a hang. There was no structure to it. It was just having conversations with people. But then when I saw Anthony have that set up in his basement, I was like, oh, I could do something like this.
And by the way, having a studio, I always thought that was weird because he's all the way out in Long Island. I was like, is that going to work? How's he going to get people out there?
It was hard when he got fired.
Too.
When he got fired, it was hard to get people out there.
Yeah, I'd imagine. But like him, I had got a vast network, and technology has gotten so much better in terms of getting guests. But I mean, I just you got to wonder how it's all going to work, and how do you if you're going to go live? There's just so many things it seems to be thinking about what's going to work. Like what works. And
well, do you know anybody that has a studio that you maybe
then they're all wanting to come do it. Yeah.
As long as you don't.
But I was going to say the commute. That's what the commute. The fact that he has a studio. When I got a studio in my house, SiriusXM had me do it early, like 6 to 9 a.m. slot for 2 years, and I was like,
"You did it in your house?"
Yeah, I negotiated. I was like, "You want me to do 6 to 9 a.m.? You got to build me a nice studio," and they did, and that was the richest I could ever be. A friend of mine's wife works at a college and walks 5 minutes. That's her commute. I think a commute is almost a definition of your wealth. My body turned to mush when I had to drive into the city an hour each way. Like everything about a long commute made me feel weaker and less than. And the idea that you can have a studio in your house or work from home, no matter what your job is a pretty sweet deal.
Yeah,
I think
the commute can definitely grind on you, but it also is an opportunity to listen to books on tape.
For sure, you do whatever you can to be productive and be positive. Yeah,
and you can go 2 hours early and get an hour workout in before you get there.
I did that.
There's a lot of good stuff that can come from everything if you look at things correctly.
I agree. I share your outlook. I think that one of the things I've been listening to your podcast for years, but like not every episode, not religiously, but since I lost my job, I was like, let me just start listening to Rogan. And what's really interesting about you, in my opinion, is you are the perfect example of somebody that everybody wants to put into a box, and you can't. It's what's wrong with everything in our country and our conversation. It's whatever people think that you are. Everybody that I tell that I'm doing this show, they say they have an opinion of you. And then I listen to your show, and here's the main takeaway I get from your conversations is that you try to find the positivity in everything. You're like the most positive guy. Whatever you think about any issue or any idea, any opinion you have, you're always being so positive and so helpful. And it has been, honestly, in this like trying time. The other thing, my dad just I get fired. My dad had a heart attack, and then a week later, he's on blood thinners. And he faints and bounces his face off a counter, rips his eye open, goes into surgery. Now he can't see out of his eye. And he's a ski instructor and a cyclist, and he's a race car driving instructor. And so I'm dealing with that, dealing with my job, dealing with my family, listening to you and a handful of other people, just bringing as much positivity to every scenario and situation. And that's my nature too. But it's some days, it doesn't matter who you are. You got to peel yourself off the ground, but I can't let my daughter see me sweat either.
Yeah, well,
let them see me vulnerable, but they're not going to see me sweat.
Well, you don't have to sweat. You just have to grind. You just have to hustle. Listen,
I'm
you're a respected guy. You're a very good host of a show. You just have to find a new venue. That's all it is. This is a good opportunity. You're healthy. You don't have anything wrong with you.
Mentally and physically, I've always thought mentally that I was the happiest, healthiest guy. So it's been a weird thing to not be able to espouse that on people, and physically, I'm back too. I'm back to training.
Well, that's good shit, man. It's like you just need to find a place. The thing about doing it in the city, and I know you don't want to live in the city, but doing it in the city, you can get guests in studio
for sure,
and that is so much better. It's so much better.
Why do you think that?
Because the way we're talking right now,
I agree, but you can't look on a camera at somebody.
No, there's a weird delay. Like when I was doing it with Snowden, there's a weird delay.
Oh yeah, but he wasn't even in Russia or something like that.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. It was real time.
Yeah,
I mean the actual lag was very minimal. What do we think the lag was?
The Russians.
FaceTime.
It's nothing, right?
It's still, but yeah,
it's nothing. But even FaceTime, like when I'm on the road and I'm FaceTiming my family, it's weird. Like, what did you say? Huh? Oh, okay.
Right.
There's a weird thing.
I agree with you. I always preferred having people in the studio for sure.
It's 50% better.
I feel like
it might be more. I just made up that number.
I feel like
50%.
One cool opportunity is to travel to different places and find the most interesting, articulate people and do gigs there, do stand-up at night, spend a couple days there interviewing the most interesting people in whatever town that you're in.
Oh, 100%.
And so that's kind of what I'm
The thing
doing.
about that is you're going to need someone to film if you want to do a video element of it. Here's the thing about a video element of it. When you talk about... some people don't listen to this podcast. They only watch it.
Right.
It's a lot of people.
Right.
When we first did it, the video aspect of it was just an aside. We did it with a webcam, and then we started putting it on iTunes, and the iTunes was way more popular than the video, which was on Ustream, which was it's not. I mean, I don't even know if it exists anymore. Does Ustream exist? It does.
Now it's YouTube. Though.
Now it's YouTube. It's a built-in platform, right? So there's millions and millions of people are on it, just looking.
Yeah,
for
I
shit
definitely want to do that. I definitely want to do that. But I'm thinking you're making obviously a lot of good points about where it can be done and what the best ways to do it. And I've been talking to so many smart people, obviously every day. I mean, my network is I'm lucky to have this network of amazing people that are just so kind and generous to give me this advice and honest too. They tell you don't be an idiot, don't don't do that. As a comic, I think that's the way that you think. You want people to be as brutal as they can be with criticism. You don't take it personally. You're just like, okay, yep, I'll take that advice. I'll apply that and change that and tweak that. Yeah.
Well, there's nothing wrong with getting some constructive or even destructive criticism. Like you just you have to have feedback. I mean, it's not always accurate or correct, but feedback is important, and that's one of the good things about having like one of those talk shows where people call in. That's one of the good things. They get to give you some feedback.
I love that.
One of the bad things is they get to give you some feedback.
Fine.
That's one of the bad things.
Yeah, so it's always entertaining. Yeah. Like if they shit on me, it was always very entertaining. As a comic, like I love heckles. I love anybody yelling out. I live for it. Those are my favorite moments.
What I like best is one-on-one conversations with people. That's what I like best. Me too. And that's what I like best to listen to as well. Yeah. And like when I'd listen to Stern, and then when someone would call in, I was like, why are they letting somebody call in? And some guy would yell out Baba Booey or talking about sniffing Robin's farts or something like that.
Or they would just be boring, and you don't want to be rude, but you have to be. Like, I can't. I'm doing a show here, man. You're babbling.
Just odd that he would just go to callers in the middle of a conversation, with some lady who's an actress or something. It's just, I mean, but that's the chaos that he sort of cultivated.
Well, I think that's what's the great thing about this show is the people that you get and the interaction, the conversation that you have. And I was trying to do the same thing for, at Sirius.
Well, you were doing it. You just were doing it in this walled garden with a bunch of assholes that are running the ship.
And doing it for like 20, 25 minutes apiece. I'm always amazed that you and a handful of other people can sustain like a 2-hour conversation. I love that.
Anybody can. You can do it too.
I know. I think I can, but I was never allowed to. There was always those rules were always like
cut to commercial. Yeah.
Yeah. You had hard breaks. I'm doing a podcast the other day, and I'm like, "Thanks for tuning in. We're almost out of time." I'm like, "You didn't tune in, and we're not almost out of time. I can do whatever the hell I want. Whatever I want.
No such thing.
I could just keep talking. We can just keep talking."
Well, the worst thing is presidential debates. You're literally
horrible.
Picking the person who's going to run the free world. And you have to stop because there's a Palmolive commercial. Is Palmolive even a thing? Or I'm such an old man. Listen, I'm pulling out fucking Palmolive references.
I think they're usually pharmaceutical companies at this point.
Pfizer.
Yeah,
so
but
it's a boner pill.
The irony of them talking about the pharmaceutical companies and then they advertise during the break. But you're absolutely, it's not real. The presidential debates are so not real. And all those networks, I mean, my friends produce those things. And it's just like, it's a show. It's like...
Well, when you get Bernie, like when I had Bernie Sanders in here and you get to talk to him like a real human being.
Yes.
You go, oh, you're a human being who cares about people, and you have a different perspective on what these people are saying. Your idea of democratic socialism is not this wacky socialism.
It's not a soundbite.
And it's not this thing where people think you're just going to steal money from hardworking folks and give it to lazy people. That's the worst case.
It's
stereotype.
It's none of that. No, it's not. We're not gonna privatize shoe stores and
He's
gyms.
a very thoughtful person.
And I was talking to his, because as I told you, I'm thinking very seriously now about also running for Congress. And I was talking to his, I think, deputy chief of staff, a guy named Ari Rabenhoff, great guy. And I was telling him I was doing your show, and he told me that after Bernie Sanders did your show, everybody was recognizing him. I'm like, really? Like, he reached a whole different demographic talking to you than he ever had before, because he's mostly on those cable news shows. He's mostly on terrestrial or radio. But when you do these, what do you even call this now? Non-traditional, alternative media? It might as well be mainstream. But the point is, when you have a long conversation with Bernie Sanders and he's not like up there, what we have to do, that shit is annoying. You've heard it before. He sits down and has a real conversation with you, and everybody's like, oh man, that guy's making a lot of good points.
Yeah. Well, you got to think of like what is annoying to people. And one of the things that's annoying to people is that fucking rapid fire, the
cadence.
And healthcare and Medicare and education shall be free and blah, blah, blah. And like people are like, hey, fuckface, I just got off work.
Yeah.
Okay?
Why are you yelling?
This guy's annoying and he wants to take my money. Fuck him. And you just press stop.
Right. And you have to be able to change your cadence, your diction, and your commentary. And you have to be able to get questions that are more thoughtful and human. That's the thing about all these cable news interviewers and network, like they always want to get some headline. And that's the other thing, about corporate media too. They want you. So I've been in that belly of that beast, Joe, for the last 15 years, corporate, political media. And it's so manufactured. I could tell you so many stories. They call you up and they say, how do you feel about anything? We want to make sure that you're completely the opposite of the other panelists, and so that you have a really robust argument. And it's like, not everything is binary. Most things aren't. There's a ton of nuance, a ton of gradation. We don't have to hate each other. That's how they get ratings. That's how they sell advertising. I blame most of the problems in our country on corporate media, terrestrial radio, just doing that format all day. It works really well for conservatives, not as well for liberals, but it still works. And they sell ads, and a few people make a lot of money, but the country suffers. The idea that we're so divided is such bullshit. I talk to people from all over the country, travel all over the place. I understand the issues really intimately, and I don't care what you think about anything. There's something you have to offer me. There's something you have to make my life, to enrich me. I don't care what you believe on abortion or guns or certain things, because if you could teach me how to fix this engine, I'm into it. I want to learn how to. If you could teach me how to exercise better, but you don't like our trade policies, I don't give a shit what you think about our trade policies. Let's just not even talk about it. Let's talk about the things, and it's trying to get to the root of somebody's soul is what we should all be trying to do. Every day we should try to, what happened to you that made you think this way? What is the experience? What is your journey? To me, that's the fascinating shit about human beings.
Well, one of the things about something like cable talk shows or news shows or any of these political arenas is that there's a lack of real interaction with the general public in terms of like real conversations with people. You have a host who's wearing makeup, who's got spotlights on him, and there's a microphone in front of him, and he's talking to these other people, and there's cameras pointed at them, and no one really feels like this is not
it's a play,
but it's not a normal way of people talking.
No, nobody talks like that.
And rarely you see someone sit down and they like every now and then they have those shows where like it's a one-on-one, like Trump will sit across from fucking what's his name? What's that dude's name?
Which network?
It's a Fox guy.
Hannity?
No,
Dobbs.
the other Dobbs, that guy.
Yeah.
Who's hilarious. It's funny watching the two of them together.
I mean, Dobbs is lost his mind.
He's just kicking that ass and going like just.
He is digging way in, but it works. He's making. I used to be on with that guy, the most pleasant guy in the world. But what he's doing, it's so much. It's a North Korean situation. Lou Dobbs. It's like state media every night. It doesn't matter. He shall not be questioned kind of guy. Worship the president. It's like, what are you doing? That's not even. But that's it's. I once got into this long drawn out argument with Chris Cuomo, who I like a lot. But I was talking to him about, listen, man, the difference between TV and radio. It's simple. It's on radio. You can have a long form. You can have a 20-minute to 2-hour conversation, and it's real, and you get a lot done. On TV, you can have a 5-minute conversation. I go, there's so many guests that you have on your show that I have on my show. They're way more. They have the ability to be thoughtful and nuanced and make points. They can't do that on cable. And now, he's doing a radio show. So good for him.
Well, that's what I was getting at, is that this separation between the people and then the just unnatural environment that they're in. No one can relate to it. What they can relate to is two people just talking to each other.
They can't relate to it, Joe, but they also think, because they're conditioned to, that if it's on a network, this person must be an authority and must be intelligent. But I'm here to tell everybody, I was talking about credit default swaps in the financial industry. I have an associate's degree and came up in the New York City comedy clubs. Like, I really didn't have any business talking about that. But the thing is, I could sound really smart for 3.5 minutes on anything. Get me to minute 5, I can't go that deep on certain issues, and I shouldn't be an authority on it. But just because I'm on cable news with a jacket and a shirt and I'm this guy, people are like, oh, okay, well, I'll believe this guy. Now, it's not real.
No,
it's not real.
That's a dying medium, too. I don't think 20, 30 years from now that's going to exist in the same form.
Shorter than that.
Yeah, and then also the interjection of commercials every 7 minutes. The things that they're doing on debates is the same thing they're doing on these other cable talk shows, where they're trying to encapsulate these things into these very quick 5-minute sound bites. And
have you ever heard of Intelligence Squared debates?
Yes.
My friend John Donovan is the moderator. He should be moderating the presidential debates. He's the greatest guy. They have these really well-informed panelists. They have emotion, and they do like 2 hours. Mm-hmm. And you can come in thinking so often one idea about the issue, and you leave thinking something completely different, because you have these very smart people debating with an excellent moderator who doesn't let any bullshit, and you really learn a lot. No commercial breaks, and you can listen to it.
Well, even 3 people is too many people.
Probably.
Yeah, it is. It's like if you want to get to know someone, it's a one-on-one. Because even with 3 people, there's moments where you have something to say, and then someone interjects something else, and then you lose your point, and then you don't express it. And then the other person's talking, and you don't know when to talk, and then you find yourself being a little bit more
Right.
assertive in the way you're talking because you're trying to get your point across. You feel like I'm
You're
not
nailing it.
talking enough. And then if there's 4 people, you're fucked. Like the most ridiculous thing they ever do is when they have those 7 people panels and one person just starts fucking chiming in and screaming out loud, and they talk over people. And
But they're also talking about, because I had one foot in cable news for a long time, still do. I mean, I still go on. And then I had my long form radio show where I would talk to policy experts. It was very like like right now when they're talking about the polls for the presidential race, is anybody that's paying attention to that is wasting their time. It's a complete waste of time to talk about who's leading in what poll a year away. It's a year away. You could have a terrorist attack. You could have the economy crash.
Like it for a game.
It's not a game.
Okay, but it is a game. If you're watching basketball, do you not pay attention to the first minute of the game? Because it doesn't really matter. What's really important is how many points are scored over the 4 quarters. Is there 4 quarters?
Of a basketball game, I think there might be 2 halves. College or pro.
But the point is, this is a weird game going on. Like Kamala Harris was ahead, now she's fucked. Like this is fun. It's fun for people. This is half of what it is. I know it's serious. I know it's significant. I know there's grave consequences to picking the wrong leader. But this is a game.
Right, but it's a bullshit game because, as you said earlier, the reason why Kamala Harris or anybody else takes a step backwards is because one stupid moment. And how are we possibly picking somebody on
with
one?
Kamala Harris, there was a bunch of different issues.
Sure, yeah, but often,
yes,
I mean, Howard Dean.
Yeah.
Come on, I mean, have you listened to that?
Yes.
It never gets old.
It never gets old.
Never ever. But it is weird that this day and age that crashed him.
Well,
given everything that these other candidates have done and said.
Yeah, but honestly, there's probably something else. It's how he responded to that as well. Is like he showed a lack of humility or understanding of what it was. Like, yeah, I sounded stupid. That's not what's important, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I screamed out. Like when you got a microphone on me and I get excited, I go, yeah.
I mean, you can also talk just about the ego of the people who are running for these offices. And they don't seem to have an understanding of the idea of ego and what it means and how they should try to separate from it while using it. Like once you get into politics, much less entertainment, and you get really well known and famous, you start believing things about yourself that aren't even remotely true. They're not at the root.
There's some of that, right?
Huh?
There's certainly some of that.
A lot. I feel like they all have that.
You're protecting yourself, right? You have an image. You're protecting yourself.
Yeah, it's a delicate dance that I am completely turned off by. I mean, that's why it's hard to think about. Like I was seriously considering running for Congress because
you were or are.
It's hard right now because I learned some crazy shit.
What'd you learn? Dun dun dun.
First of all,
drum roll, please.
The corruption. I live in New York State.
Wait a minute, New York State's not corrupt.
The New York State.
Stop this show.
All of politics. There's levels of corruption, but in the New York State Democratic Party, there's always been all kinds of issues. So I met with a whole bunch of really smart people about running for New York 17, which is the district that I live in. Like the day after I lost my gig at Sirius, the woman had been representing that district for 33 years announced that she was retiring. And I was like, well, I got nothing going on. And I've always thought about running for office, and let me, seriously consider it. I reached out to a whole bunch of people from all different walks of life, congressmen that were in office, that had been out of office, campaign coordinators. I talked to Chris Cuomo. I talked to a whole bunch of people. But there's one person told me that if you want to win, regardless of your party affiliation, you have to. There's a certain special interest group that you had to promise you wouldn't interfere with and make sure they got an envelope of cash. And I'm like, well, I'm not doing that. I will tell everybody and everywhere I go about that.
What is it?
I can't because I don't have a second source, so I wouldn't say it. But when I'm trying to get one to prove that it's true.
What does it rhyme with?
The special interest group?
Yes.
Won't do it because everybody will know. Everybody will know. And it's dangerous. But the point is.
What's the opposite of that special interest group?
Maybe the private sector.
Right, but what would be like What would be?
I can't.
Like,
I will tell you
what would be the thing
get,
that they're opposed to?
What would it be that they're opposed to?
Yeah,
You
what
interfering with the way that they run their show.
Right. But I'm saying like what group that we know would be opposed to them?
I could tell you it could be a religious group, a private sector, a union, or a company. A corporate interest. It could be any one of those. The point
ACLU?
is the point is that all of those types of organizations pressure that you have to. I'm an honest guy. I can't lie. I've never said anything into a microphone that I don't believe, and that's been both to my detriment and to my benefit. I think I'm authentic. So when I was talking about running for office, my brother's like, you can't lie. You can't be dishonest to people. How are you going to do that? You'll have to sell out at least a little bit. That was the other thing, and then I realized I'm not sure that this district or the country's ready for someone like me. I'm a comic. I've said a billion things on TV, into a microphone, and on stage, and we're in a humorless country right now. Number one, I smoke pot. Like, are they ready for are we there yet?
I don't think we're humorless. I disagree. I think there's a lot of criticism going on, but that's because there's a lot of voices.
Do you think, I agree with you overall, but I mean for politicians, for me to run for office and you see some stand-up bit I did or something, and then my opponent's playing that out of context.
Dude, I got 5 words for you. Grab them by the pussy. That guy's the president.
I think he is an aberration. I do. I don't think there's anything else that can get away with that kind of stuff.
I think you're probably right. He's definitely an aberration. But I just
Al Franken won as a senator as a comedian, but he was a writer. Like, there wasn't a ton of, and he got in trouble when there was a photo of him. I've said,
well, it's more than a photo. There was actually
all the allegations, but the photo, perception. Politics is perception, and whatever people see, it's different than what they hear and what they believe. And so that's the point. That photo was harmless, but it looked bad, just like any joke I've said or anything that I've said out of context. So I just feel like, and then I thought that they could destroy me and any future earning potential that I could have. The second episode of my podcast, I interviewed Tim Ryan. You know who he is? He was running for president. Because I was asking, what does it take? And it's, first of all, you got to raise $1 million from people and individuals you don't like, you don't want to be affiliated with, but you have to. You got to make them promises that the whole system is so filled and corrupted with money in almost every district in every state, regardless of the office. And how does a person, I'm a fairly affluent guy, I'm a white straight guy, whatever, but I don't know how I can afford to apply for a job for a year and pay my mortgage. So I want to do it if it looks feasible, and if I don't have to take care of my family, my parents, not to mention, pay my bills, but you have to be an independently wealthy person, which sucks because it makes it much harder for regular people. There's plenty of exceptions to run for office.
Now, when you say that you had to give them an envelope and that you had to, what did you have to do? Did you have to support them?
Through intermediaries. You have to basically say, I'm not going to interfere with your business. We'll just look the other way.
You had to say that.
That's what I'm told. That was what I was told by a guy.
How are you told this? Are you told this like, hey, if you ever want to be congressman, you have to do this?
You don't have to, but if you want to win, you're far more likely to win if you pay off these.
Far more likely.
It's not impossible, but they'll try to destroy you if you don't.
Really?
Yeah, and I can't. It's like, Joe.
They'll just go after you.
You can destroy if it's just me.
Why can't you say who this is?
Because I don't know if it's positively true. I need another source. I try to act like a journalist.
And someone who's the intermediary, like what kind of person is this?
He managed campaigns in that district. He knows everything about the politics of and the special interest in that district.
So it could potentially be that he's hoeing you out.
Absolutely, which is why I won't tell you. Because once
he's saying that so that he's like sort of playing both sides.
So he wanted me to run and he wants...
Sure, I'm sure he did. But he might also want to maintain his relationship with whatever group this is. So he says, hey, I've gotten assurance.
Knowing this guy, I don't think he's affiliated with that group, but it's possible. And so I try to have journalistic ethics before I would say something. I'll tell you off the mic.
Okay.
But I wouldn't.
Can't wait for the show to be over.
But I wouldn't say without having a second source. Like, that's what's irresponsible about so much of our media.
Right.
Like when Trump or anybody says fake news, it's like, listen, It's not. You can't. If you have to have two sources, you go to your editor with those two sources, and then you can print it. You can't make them up. If you make up a source, you're like Mencia. That's it. You're done. You can't. That's like stealing a joke. You can't make up a source. You'll never work again. It would be a stupid thing to do.
I think it's even worse when you make up a joke. I mean, if you make up a source, I mean, you literally can't work. Mencia is still working.
Fair enough.
People do
it's
work
different.
after they steal jokes.
Journalism and comedians are a lot different.
Yeah, it's the worst. If someone finds out you're making up a source,
nobody does it. In the few instances where someone did make up a source or even plagiarize, which are the two worst things you can do as a journalist, they never work again, or they don't work for a very long time. Right. You know, Johan Hari. He's been on your show. He's been on my show. He was accused of some, like, I think it was plagiarism.
Yeah.
And it took him a really long time to win his integrity back.
Yeah, I didn't find that out, actually, until after he'd been on the show the second time.
Yeah.
But, like, what
great guy.
He's a great guy. But what was he accused of?
I don't remember. I feel like it might have been plagiarism, though. And that kind of thing, the point is, that kind of thing ruins you. And so I wouldn't come here and do that, even though I wouldn't call myself a journalist, but I would want, because of what you're saying, because you're smart. I'm very skeptical, too, of people and their source and what their interests are. And a lot of people really want me to run for Congress for a lot of different reasons, but mainly because they think I can tap my network of wealthy people and, they can make money.
Love Trump or hate Trump, that is precisely what he was talking about when he said drain the swamp. Now, this is the swamp, this sort of convoluted world of influence.
Well, yes and no. The swamp.
Yeah, but it's also money and all the other things that he didn't drain, and he actually brought in people that were.
He made the swamp
swampier,
it's filled with malaria and crocodiles. We don't even define things. Unfortunately, we don't have the same baseline. Unfortunately, in this country of what words mean. But I've always thought what that meant was government corruption. That the private sector is influencing government because, and the way that they obviously do it, the system that we have is you have to get money from wealthy people and wealthy interests, and then you have to advocate for them. Whatever the interest is, you have to, or they won't give you more money. And so that's what's beautiful about Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. They are not allowing any donations from any super PACs, from any wealthy individuals. It's grassroots. And
I think Tulsi's doing that as well.
Yeah, a handful of them are. The whole Democratic Party mostly committed to it. I don't think Biden's doing it. But
if Biden was doing it, I don't think he remembers.
I totally agree with that, by the way.
Dude's out.
Well, listen, I don't think you should be running for president if you're 75. I think the same about Trump and Bernie and Biden. All three of them are old. My dad...
Some people are 75 and they're very lucid.
My dad is in the best shape of any man I know. Dude just had a heart attack. Bernie Sanders just had a heart attack.
Yeah.
Like, when you get older, especially as a man, shit breaks down. Yeah, but it's like, who has the energy? Plus, I just think younger people just have more of an actual interest and understanding of what's happening. That's why Andrew Yang is so attractive.
Yes. Yeah. I agree with that. But I think that there's, it depends entirely on the individual. There's 75-year-olds that are healthy and there's 75-year-olds that are not.
I disagree. Because you could be the healthiest 75-year-old in the world, did everything right, and then shit can just shut down because you're 75. Your body's just old.
It's possible, but
it's far more. The actuary, possibilities are just far higher.
But you're balancing things out, right? You also have wisdom and experience and education.
So
and
go consult a younger person.
Maybe.
I mean, Bernie Sanders is one of my heroes, but I want him to just, endorse Elizabeth Warren and get it over with.
Well, first of all, being a president is a ridiculous proposition, period.
Yes.
And it's an antiquated idea.
I agree.
To have one alpha
that
runs this whole fucking show.
Yes.
It's a great idea when there's 50 people in a trial.
Yes. I have a chief, but not a president of 330 million people.
Stupid.
That is an outsized influence and a bully pulpit, and then has this. We have this reverence for them and this defense of them, or this attacking of their every move, their every character, and it's just such an easy thing to dunk on them, and it's just tiresome to me. I agree with you.
It's unhealthy for the country too. It's unhealthy for all of us.
It's unhealthy for our souls every single day, especially the thing that you miss about pre-Trump, whoever it was, Republican or Democrat. Remember when you used to have weekends? You could relax on the weekend. No politics.
Well, that's internet, though.
You're right. There's a lot of that.
Have you seen Trump's religious advisor?
Yes.
How wonderful is that?
The woman who says, if you don't support Trump, you're going against God.
Yes. Can we play any of that?
I mean,
I don't think so. It's not that video. I don't think we can play because someone had that together.
Too bad.
I can do it, I think. If you don't support President Trump, then you are going against God. And it's like,
yeah, and I'm not going against God.
Those people are so effective as like, I think comics can really relate to them. They're so good at performing.
Yeah, well,
and so convincing. Yeah, if you
Kinnison was one of those.
Right.
He was a preacher.
Right. He's one of the, who could turned into a comic. He had that skill set. Trump is the same way, the way he stalks the stage and works the audience. I mean, it's very, very effective. But it's also, to say that if you don't support a certain politician, like, to me, that stuff is it's very boring.
Right,
like, come on. This binary bullshit.
But she's a horseshit artist no matter what. I mean, that's what she does. She's trying to get low-frequency people. She catches these 9-volt brains. Paula White, Donald Trump's new advisor, ratchets up rhetoric, denounces demonic networks opposing president's calling.
Demonic.
She's wonderful. I bet that lady does coke, and I bet she likes it right in the booty.
I think that every time you
I bet she parties.
Every time you see one of these people, I just have a knee-jerk reaction. When I see a Catholic priest, I'm like,
oh, yeah.
When I see one of these people, I'm like, they're completely contradicting.
Oh,
you know, these gay conversion people that have come out
Pray
and
the
been
gay
like,
away. Yeah. They're banging guys.
Oh, hell, all the time.
All the time. You remember Ted Haggard?
Do I?
Oh,
I massaged him.
I'll bet you did.
Well paid.
With meth or no?
Smooth skin. Yeah, of course. I would never massage Ted Haggard without meth. Really?
Blocked me on Twitter. Yeah. He said
that's quite an accolade.
See, I forget what he said. He said something like, after Sunday service, what should we do? And I said, how about meth and blowjobs? And that was it. Boom.
That's actually what they do. It's a joke, but it's also probably what he seemed like. Such a nice guy too, but it's so sad too.
Not really though. Did you ever see the thing with him and Dawkins when he got really nasty with Dawkins?
Yeah.
That was before he actually got in trouble too. This was when he was running.
That was when he was
a whole
still
arena filled with
back to ego.
Yeah.
When you think so much of you and your ideas, and you come up in that case, Ted Haggard versus Richard Dawkins is like Mike Tyson versus
a baby.
Something lower.
Yeah.
Something much lower. That's a fetus.
Right.
And there's no match, and so you're going to lose your shit. I love those debates on.
Super frustrated, but it's also he's frustrated that Dawkins has an arrogance about him. And this.
Yeah, scientists tend to.
Yeah, but he does specifically,
well, he's
particularly. Well, I had him in here recently, and he was talking about life after death. That he thinks the lights just go out, and I'm like, well, maybe, but we don't know.
Think?
We don't know. I don't think. I don't have any experience with what happens when you die. I really have no idea. It would be very interesting if there was some sort of dimensional travel thing that happens to the spirit or the soul or whatever this concept of consciousness is.
How much do you think about your mortality?
Sure.
On a regular?
I try not to. It doesn't do any good.
Right. But when it comes in, what do you do?
I'm trying to be nice to the people I know. Try to be kind to the people that I care about.
That's an interesting answer. When I say, when you think about your own death, what do you do? I just try to be a good person. I love that.
There's nothing you can do. While I'm here, I want as little bad feelings as possible. It's impossible to have no bad feelings.
Right.
So whatever I can do to mitigate that, I try.
How have you worked on your anger and had that dissipate? Like, what's the best thing?
Exercise.
Exercise
is the big one. Yeah, because I think a lot of my anger is just caveman genetics. So, and then a fucked up childhood too. So, growing up in a violent household and being around a lot of violence. Like, I also had to deal with. I grew up essentially all throughout high school until I was 22 fighting. Right. So I was always involved
as an outlet
violence.
For your emotions.
Yeah, well, I was also developed my human potential. It was martial arts. It was competition. But it's also there's a downside of that I grew up like being praised for explosive violence.
That's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it was in competition. But it was agreed upon. I was doing it with other trained killers, but it's still that's a weird thing to get past. Because
I have an example of. I mean, I'm sure you have a billion of them. I didn't mean to cut you off, but when my daughter was like 3 years old, we're visiting family, and people I don't really know, my wife's family, and his 5-year-old son goes over. My daughter's just looking up at the TV, this little 3-year-old girl, and he comes over and he just clocks her, knocks her over. And we're all like, oh my God, what? And the dad comes over and just starts beating the shit out of his 5-year-old. And I just start screaming. I'm like, that's why he did it. That's why he did it. You learn what you live.
Oh my God.
You know, and children learn what they live. And so but what you're saying, when you train, when you exercise, are there feelings, are there emotions coming out, or is it energy that you're just expending?
Energy.
You're not thinking about when you're.
I'm not like angry at my child or anything when I'm hitting the bag. No, I'm just exercising. And when I'm running or doing yoga or anything I'm doing that's strenuous. I just had this conversation with Ben Westhoff, who was on here before you. And the way I described it is I think that a human body has a certain amount of physical requirements. I think there's your body's a system, and this system is designed through nature and natural selection and hundreds of thousands of years of being human beings to have issues that come up and to be physically prepared to deal with those issues, whether it's a neighboring tribe invades you or an animal's trying to attack you or you're just trying to hunt and gather food. All those things are built into our system, and it takes tens of thousands of years for that DNA to shift and change and become something different. So we have a certain amount of physical requirements that we're just born with, and it's different with every person. Some people have less, some people have more. I tend to be on the high side, and I'm a different person when I exercise. I'm a different person when I get time to sleep correctly and eat correctly and exercise. I'm different, and I like that person better. That's a nicer person. I like that guy better. So I try to be that guy as much as I can, but I have a million different people living inside my brain all the time, bouncing around, fighting for dominance.
Really?
You know? Yeah, it's like there's a director that try to keep them all in order, which is like the consciousness. Like,
is that a struggle?
A lot.
Every day?
Everybody has it. There's always things like you're a better person when you're well rested. Life is going well.
For sure.
You had great interactions with your family, great interactions with your friends, and then you run into someone on the street. Versus you just got fired from your job. You walked in and your wife's sucking the plumber off. You have all these things go wrong.
All that happened to me just now. By the way,
all those things can happen.
I lose my job. I go home. There's my wife with the plumber.
Are a different person. Dependent upon what you encounter in your life.
I completely agree with that, but it's a practice. I like that word.
Yes.
And you have to practice it every day. And you have to find out.
It. You're not going to fix it.
Right.
You're not just going to get better. You're just going to get better at forming the good habits.
What about therapy?
I don't do that.
Never did?
No, but I do get in an isolation tank. I've done a lot of psychedelics.
I was going to ask you about that. I'm thinking about trying that.
You should.
I feel like that's been a big part of your life.
What do you want to do?
Yeah, right.
Mushrooms?
No.
Have you ever done mushrooms?
No, but I can't.
You can't?
I mean, I would like to. If I do it, I want to do it with you for sure.
Okay.
But I got a long night ahead of me, I think.
Oh, what are you doing tonight?
I have family that lives nearby. I haven't seen in a long time that are begging me to.
Tripping balls.
I probably don't want to.
A lot of little microdose. Microdose is not a bad way to get through a day.
Can you drive with it?
Oh, I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, I don't know where I am. I got a rental car.
Yeah,
I really want to do it. I'm ready for it, but I feel like I need. Huh?
You've done nothing?
No, I mean weed every day.
Yeah,
that's been my saving grace. Yeah, you got any of those Kevin Smiths? No, I don't want to smoke.
We can smoke a little weed
on the show because I feel like it makes me verbose.
Well, you're already verbose. You talk for a living. There's nothing wrong with that.
But it makes me even worse, and I don't want to.
What happened to this one?
It got crusty and broke.
Don't worry about it. We can do it or towards the end, whatever. I loved. Yeah, but for me, I didn't. My brother was in rehab when I was 16. He was 18. I love that you're scanning the room.
Where's those Kevin Smith joints we had on the table? They're over there. Oh, okay.
So,
what's that right there? That little tube right there, Jamie.
That's hilarious. There's just stuff everywhere. What's that?
Oh, there's one.
What is this? This ashtray filled with treasures.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't touch any alcohol or drugs till I was like 25. So my brother was in rehab. We had to do an intervention. It was nuts. And I was like, I knew I wanted to be a comic. And I thought that if I did anything, it would affect me. It would distract me.
Make you a loser. No.
It would just make me pursue that and not my dreams. This is the other thing. Like, if I take a hit off this and I still want to run for Congress, like it shouldn't matter. This is how I deal. Like,
well, it's legal. It's no different than having a drink.
Yeah, of course, it's preposterous to judge, but people do.
Yeah, but I think the generation that's coming up will judge less. The generation after them will judge less, and it's just we're living with the echoes of reefer madness, right? We're living with Harry Anslinger and William Randolph Hearst's work in the 1930s.
Look them up,
still
everybody.
affecting people.
Look them up. Yeah, no doubt. But I think that you say they're the echoes, and I think they're pretty loud. Certainly pretty loud in certain parts of the country.
Yeah.
And it's hard to measure.
The good thing about being a congressman is you're representing a district, right?
One of the guys is I become really good friends with. He was a Republican congressman. His name is Trey Radel, and he's the guy he got from Florida. He got
Trey Radel. I like it.
He got kicked out of Congress for buying cocaine from a Fed. You remember that?
No, I don't.
It was like 3 years ago.
I don't pay that much attention to politics. I think politics is like baseball.
Yeah.
Like some people just watch the World Series, and some people watch college and look at fucking first-round draft picks.
Right.
And
I'm addicted to it.
Yeah.
I was. That's another nice thing, to not having to be live every day and not having to know every single step of everything of going on, because you realize that you're a very small minority of people.
When you found out that thing, when you were told that thing by that guy,
just make sure this doesn't go to waste, Jimmy.
It won't. There's plenty of it. When you were told that thing about the guy who was the congressman job, that you're going to have to
bribe,
play ball. Did you feel like
let down?
Yeah, like almost like, okay, I've been promoting a rigged game.
No, I know intimately how rigged the game is. It's just that you don't always know where and who the players are. No, I mean, I've done enough.
Right, but isn't it? You're an honest person. You're not a bullshit artist.
I hope everybody thinks that.
I do. But so if you're a part of a bullshit system, right? It's almost like you can't. To be who you are, you almost like can't be a congressperson.
You just nailed it.
The system
What
exists,
you just said almost made me want to cry.
Don't cry.
Because, I get very emotional when someone pings a truth. That's what happens to me. I'm like, Jesus, I can't believe he just said that. My brother, who's my moral compass, my older brother, is just radical, like ridiculous, radically different person. He's like, said just what you said right before I came over here, because the problem with you running is that, do you really buy in to this corrupt system? And I think because I'm such an optimist and such a positive thinking person, I've convinced myself, and that I do know a lot of people in Congress, know them personally and intimately, and I know a lot of people that work in government that I really admire. But the system, it's not the people as much as the system. But I also think that the way, I don't want to talk about it in a way that exonerates the public. Right. Like, we have to not be apathetic. That's what my show's always been about. It wasn't always a confusing title, StandUP, because I'm a comic, but it meant stand up for something. It meant care about something. You don't have to be a full-time activist, but don't be apathetic. The United States of apathy. We can't sit here and blame the systems that we are complicit in. You watch this fucking every weekend in Hong Kong. Every weekend they stand up for their democracy.
They've been doing it for months.
Right. That's the biggest story. That'll be the biggest story of 2019 and maybe the decade, because they are fighting off China. It's unbelievable. Meanwhile, I just feel like we're just so comfortable. And
Hong Kong used to be a part of Great Britain, right?
Yeah.
And until like what?
90 something, when they had to give it back after, like, it was a 100-year agreement or something like that.
Which is so crazy.
But the deal was, China's like, listen, we're not going to bother you. You could keep doing what you're doing. And then they started bothering them. And they said, no, you're ours now, behave. Because they had so much more power and leverage. And then human beings stood up. Now they're doing it in Chile, and now they're doing it in Iraq. People are protesting, and they're getting shot. The greatest thing that I was ever a part of in media was probably, there was a lot of good things, but CNN and SiriusXM's coverage of the Egyptian revolution. It was fucking amazing.
And that was something that was organized by social media, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. Same thing in Iran and the Green Revolution of 2009. And
what's interesting to me about this whole Hong Kong thing is that they're being introduced to the government of China over the last few decades. That this was something they were separated from, and then all of a sudden they become property of China again, essentially, right? And so then you're seeing this thing where they become accustomed to the British way of things and the original Hong Kong way of doing things, and then things shift over. It's a really unique moment of protest because it's very rare that you see the actual government of a country shift the way it has in Hong Kong, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I don't profess to be an expert in revolution, but this is what the conversation is about right now. It's watching people in other parts of the world going out in the streets, risking their lives, literally. And meanwhile, in America, what is it that will get us unified and out in the streets? What is that issue?
Well,
and
things get us unified, particularly disasters.
Yeah, of course. 9/11. I was in New York.
What I'm saying about that was a big one, right?
I have a
shift
billion
in the way
stories.
People communicate.
A billion stories.
What I'm saying though is like we've never seen, like in our time, we've never seen a government shift over, right? You've never seen that kind of a shift where a free, democratic sort of Western way of running things all of a sudden shifts over. And because of that, I think the resistance to it is very unique.
I think if you studied the British colonization of the world, there would be a lot of that.
Sure.
I think that's what we're talking about, literally, because it was Britain.
Yeah.
And then I can't speak to the specifics of the history of that, but it's what you're bringing up is a fascinating question that I'd love to get to the bottom of, and there's probably a billion people who would be so good on it. Because it's so important. People stand up for something and care.
Yeah, but
I think.
Even with our limited understanding of the history of it, this is one thing we know for sure. They used to be under Britain, and now they're not. And now they're under China, and we're watching this resistance. And we're seeing these people, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of them in the streets.
Yeah.
And you know what my favorite part of it all was? There was one time where an ambulance had to get through. And all the people from Hong Kong just stood on the left and the right, and they let the ambulance go through. And I'm like, whoa, good luck with that in Boston. It's fucking not going to happen, bro. Look at this. Look at this video, man. I mean, this is incredible. Look at them.
This is what my brother and a lot of people who I respect and admire, but maybe I'm not courageous enough to challenge our system more, want to see here for something.
Happen.
But what's it for?
Well, right now,
and why can't it be climate?
Well, the hustle is the right versus left. Right? That's the hustle.
Yeah, that's the hustle.
And the real hustle is the fact that people get ideologically driven and they pick a side. And they go, the problem is these fucking liberals, these fucking pussy liberals. And then, the problem is these racists, these white racist assholes. Like, everyone
I love your liberal
that's how
person.
It goes, man. I'm from Berkeley, man.
More. I want that. This is a character that should definitely break out.
I should bring him out every now and then, man. It's like fucking heteronormative bullshit. Right, but the problem is these are patterns of behavior that people slide into, and that's why we were talking about putting people in boxes. People love to be able to put you in that pattern. I want to find out who you are. Who are you? Are you a liberal? Are you a libertarian? Are you a mean person? Are you a nice person? Or who are you?
My trick for my mom when she would be telling whoever what her son does. Well, he hosts a radio. He's a comedian, and he hosts a radio show. Oh, what's his radio show about? Oh, he talks about all kinds of news and issues and politics. Oh, is he a liberal or conservative? They immediately want to know that, and that's what
it's a shit racist or a cuck.
Cuck, please.
Cuck is a fucking.
But my mom, the answer, it really is. It's really underappreciated.
Word. I hope they keep it. I hope it doesn't become racist or something. It's one of those words where it's like I hope it doesn't slip away from us. Like we have it right now, we can enjoy it. Like you can silence a lot of nonsense by calling somebody a cuck. You really can. It's like woo, and it's been overused for sure. But it's because it's
not in text messaging.
It's recent and so effective. It's just got such a pop to it when someone calls someone a cuck, especially if there's a ring of truth to it.
I like it most used when you say something endearing. I'll text my brother. He's the kind of person that will use it. Maybe to me.
Stop being such a cuck.
I'll be like, I love you, bro. You're saving me. My brother's like my hero. I'm like, he's always there for me. He wrote my first stand-up material in high school when I was hosting a talent show. And he was getting kicked out of the house, and I had no material. And I was doing Dana Carvey's impressions, hosting a talent show, and I had no material. And I walked out, and I see a whole script that my brother had written.
Wow,
Didn't let me down.
That's awesome.
Even though he's high and drunk, didn't let me down. But
those are the guys the best writing for you.
I'll say something endearing to him like that, loving, and then you get back, cuck. Like that kind of response, like when you
Perfect.
don't. Yeah, no.
Perfect.
I'm not even, actually now I don't even know if he is actually using that or if I'm just high.
I'm sure he used it. It's a good word. He's a smart
But back
guy.
to revolution, like, why can't it, and what you're saying,
Well, I don't
the
know.
hustle, I love that discussion because everything is about defining. So the answer my mom would give, excuse me, getting back to that was, well, he talks about issues. So, you know, that's what he talks about. But they want to pin you into something so they can know how to feel about you, to like or
Right.
to hate you. Are you
Right.
on my team or are you not?
Right.
And that is it's so destructive.
It is, and the other thing is the resistance to what you're saying. The resistance is toxic too, because people think, no, it's important that you take a side. It's important that we deplatform Nazis. They say things like that, and you're like, whoa, 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 who's a fucking Nazi? Stop! Look, they're real Nazis, and the problem is you start calling everybody a Nazi, and then one day you meet a real one, and you ran out of words. You fucking cried wolf. These aren't Nazis. And when people feel like you're treating them unfairly or talking shit about them, and this is a problem we have both in the right and the left, they fucking double down. They dig their heels in and they go, fuck that other group. It's Team Red all the way. Fuck you, it's Team Blue.
It is so destructive.
Yes.
And watching it is
tribal.
so sad, and being a part of it when we are is the problem. And trying to have the answer to that, the solution to that is to try to listen to each other and to try to understand. Because I completely agree with you that if they don't feel respected, you've lost them completely. We can't.
People enjoy it like a team. Like when the Celtics win, people get pumped. When the Republicans win, people get pumped. You know, it's like when the Democrats win, people get pumped. It's their team. I had a friend of mine, there's a comic, who said, you know, we got to win the House, because if we win the House, we win the White House. I'm like, what are you talking about? What is we? What is we? Are we in this? Are you running for something that I don't know about? Like, they have to.
I feel that way about sports, by the way.
Bro, I think
when we say we, you're not on the team.
Exactly.
It's the Giants. You're not a Giant. You're out here not exercising.
And it's the same thinking. It's the same thinking. People attach themselves. I remember when I was a kid, I was a big fan of this guy named Donald Curry. He was this badass boxer, this world champion, welterweight champion. He was a fucking beast. And then one day, he got knocked out, and by this guy, Mike McCallum, the body snatcher. He was another world champion, a bad motherfucker, and he hit him with a left hook to the body and a left hook to the head, knocked him out cold, flat on his back, and I couldn't believe it. He was my favorite boxer, and he just got knocked out, and I felt so bad. I couldn't take it. I put my running shoes on, and I ran out of the house, and I ran for like a fucking mile, and I was just so worked up. I was probably like 17, I think, somewhere around then, 16, 17, I don't remember. Maybe a little later, 18 at the latest. I turned around and walked home. I ran like a mile and a half, a mile, whatever. I turned around. I just walked home, and I'm like, I am never going to get upset about someone I don't even know losing like that. But that was a team thing. Like, I was on Team Curry. And like, people really literally do that with fighters.
I feel like I have a litmus test, though. I feel like I fall victim to the criticism that you're laying out on the planet, on environmental stuff. Like, I feel so panicky and so anxious about that. And I care so much about it. And for me, it is religious. Like, it's a spiritual connection to nature that it brings me so much joy to be in it and around it and professing it. And to see us destroy it by the way we're living. Like, I feel, I'm one of those people that feels guilty about, I rail against single-use plastic, which is why I want to advocate for you guys to get a big
we should do
tank,
like
and
that.
everybody has
We've
thermoses.
talked about that before.
Because if you do that today, if you made that choice, just get a big thing and a glass or mugs and sell them and raise money or something.
Then Ari would come by and dose the bucket. You can't have a big open bottle of water around with Ari.
Ari Shaffir gave out like a plate of pot cookies years ago at Stand Comedy Club. My wife does not.
Did she know it was a pot cookie?
And didn't know. Went to take it, took a sniff of it, and she's like, "Oh no!" And Ari's like, "Oh, sorry."
Oh boy, she almost took it.
She is no good with the weed, the edibles especially.
Well, edibles are rough on you.
She once had like a whole Kit Kat because she was hungry and went to the sink and was washing her hands and just said, "This water is so wet." I go, "Oh shit, something's wrong." Put some headphones on. Yeah.
This water's so wet. When you look at that Hong Kong thing, right?
Yeah.
You know, I don't think we need a revolution. I think we need a resolution. Like, I think we need to, like, relax and come to this understanding. Like, most of the stuff we fight about is because we're tricked into this tribal way of thinking. And I don't mean tricked by some overlords. I mean tricked by your own biology. We have a natural inclination to form teams. And we have a natural, because there's only two real ones. I mean, you could be one of them fucking dudes who's only into independent music, and you always vote Green Party. But for the most part, there's two parties, right, when it comes to, like, national politics. And when we think about whoever the fuck's going to win, whether we think about what the real important thing is the economy or protecting our borders, or you think the real important thing is the environment and stopping global warming, we've got to do something to engineer, like, biodegradable plastics and make them mandatory, and whatever thing becomes your side. And, you know, you can make arguments for both sides. The problem is people then subscribe to whatever ideas are in that party. You know, like, you could almost pick to a person. If you're pro-life, you're probably pro-war.
But when you said, you know, we're doing well, or, you know, relax, we're doing well, I react to that with working with and advocating for all these anti-poverty organizations.
What do you mean, relax, we're doing well?
I felt like you were saying, like, when everybody is getting fired up, maybe I misunderstood you. It was like, I don't think we need a revolution, but
I think instead of thinking about it like a competition between two teams,
agreed,
we should think about it as a resolution. We should resolve our issues.
And what are our issues?
Resist being tribal.
Absolutely agree. That's the entire problem. And I'll do anything to work with you or anybody else on furthering that conversation, because that's all bullshit, theatrical, manufactured shit that you're divided by your neighbor because of any number of and that we're not talking because of that. I believe that our species can do a lot better. But
and it's normal. That's the thing. It's like normal to not like people that, you know, you look at someone who's conservative, it's normal if you're a liberal to not like them. If you're a conservative, it's normal to think these fucking silly liberals, they're going to ruin everything.
Don't put them in that box. What kind of a man is he? What kind of a father? That's how I evaluate men or women. What kind of a partner? What kind of a parent? I just watch them behave with their kids.
Right.
I don't think about what they think about guns. Right? If I find that stuff out later, then we talk about it. But what kind of a role model are you for your children is how I evaluate another man.
Yes.
I don't know if that's a good measure.
No,
that's what I do. I don't think about what show he watches or what kind of car he drives or what his job is. What kind of a man is he? What kind of a father, a role model, a contributor to society? Does he care about other people and other things? What is his morality?
Yes.
Not
perfect. Yeah, I mean,
I don't know, but that's not that. Why is that abnormal? Isn't that how we all should be? Isn't that how we all are to some extent?
I think this resonates with a lot of people that are listening. There's a lot of people that try very hard to do that. There's a lot of people that also escape the grips of tribal thinking as they get older and wiser.
Sure.
I think I'm one of those, and I think a lot of people are one of those.
I am too, I hope.
And I think one of the ways that you help it is by having these conversations. So people listen, and then it resonates with them. And maybe it only resonates to a certain degree. And maybe they slip away from it a week later when they're drinking and hanging out with their friends, or they're not exposed to the ideas, you know, very often. And when they do, it's not as effective as it would be if they were around people that were like-minded. But that's just having these conversations. You know, you're affecting, like right now, we're affecting a lot of different people's thinking, right? They're listening to this and they go, a lot of interactions could have been different on both sides depending upon what you did. Like sometimes you run into someone and they're douchey, but if you just turn around a little bit, say, it's all right, brother. You know, I'm just here. And then they relax and they go, oh, he's okay. But if you ramped it up and they ramped it up more, you can go, that guy's a piece of shit. Well, yeah, he acted like a piece of shit, but maybe part of the way he acted like a piece of shit was the way you dealt with his initial weirdness. Because sometimes people are just fucking weird and sometimes people come off douchey.
People are complex.
Yes.
People are so complex and so rooted in so many. I mean, I just go straight to interviewing. I've interviewed murderers and rapists.
Who have you interviewed that's a murderer?
Senghor, I think his last name is. Shakti Senghor. He wrote a book. He changed my life. He killed a guy when he was 18, went to prison, served 19 years, and got out and wrote a book. Oh. And redemption. Like he found, how did he get there to murdering somebody? And how did he become the man that he was? That's the way to measure a man. And so he did the worst thing. So when you say you have this idea about any number of issues, from race to energy issues, to guns, to abortion, to feminism, to all this stuff, it's like, well, where did he start? Who were his role models? Right. You know, there's so much data about the zip code that you're born into in this country determines where you will be when you're 18. And it's so accurate. It's so hard to get out of certain places. I heard you and someone talking about that. It was Dakota Meyer, who was amazing. That was I loved that whole interview. It was fascinating. Was awesome. Really interesting guy. And nothing but respect for that guy. But talking about America as like this place where it's the greatest place to get ahead, like, it's not. It's so hard to get ahead here.
In some spots. It's very hard to get ahead.
Way too many spots. For so many reasons.
I'm with you if you're talking about impoverished neighborhoods that have a history of crime and violence, because they don't fix that and it doesn't change, and it's really hard to get ahead if you're in that. Well, but in other places, if you're doing if you're in a nice city and you're in a nice neighborhood, it is difficult. But it's compared to the rest of the world, I'm just talking about social mobility. Easier. In what sense?
In terms of being able to move up a rung in the ladder.
Okay, I feel like that's only true in impoverished areas that are riddled with crime and drugs.
But that's not how it's measured.
But I'm thinking if you're talking about places where things are doing well, right?
Yeah.
And you're comparing them to the rest of the world, this is one of the easiest places to get ahead ever that's ever existed, because there's
only if you start in a certain spot. If you start at the bottom in America, it's almost impossible, which 100%. Is why the media loves to focus, and Americans love to focus on it, even themselves. So many people say, listen, I started with nothing, and now I'm a major success, and so they don't then have sympathy for somebody else. I'm like, that's your story to tell. What were your opportunities? Who were your role models? What did you have? Did you have health care? Did you have universal pre-K? That's the bottom line. If you have universal pre-K all over this country, this whole country would be so much more intelligent. That's what all the education data says. That's what every other country does. We don't have it. Agreed. But what we do have is just so many fucked up budget priorities. The budget is a moral document. It means where your values lie. And you spend what on healthcare, what on defense, what on anti-poverty, what on nutrition, what on education.
Yes.
That's how I determine, by the way, in a thoughtful conversation. Not only are you a liberal, not are you a liberal or a conservative, pro or anti-government. It's how do you think we should spend our tax money? Where should we spend it around the world and domestically, and in terms of? And it's like we have this huge defense budget with these weapons that will never be used, and Russia beat us with Facebook, and North Korea hacked into Sony. It's like that's where the threat is.
Right. Let me ask you this when it comes to defense, because that's always an interesting subject. There's two arguments, right? There's this pro-military argument that is you have to have a certain amount of military might all over the world. We have to be the world's policeman, because if we're not, someone else will, and we are protecting America by doing this, and we fight them over there so that we can be free over here, right? That's the pro-argument. The anti-argument would be you could do everything that you need to do to protect us with less money. And you could take that money and inject it into these inner cities that are impoverished and crime-ridden, and you could, in my words, this is why I always like to say, if you want to make America greater, what's the best way to do that? Well, have less losers. Have less people that are losing the game because they got a shitty roll of the dice.
Of course, give people opportunity.
Cards when they were young.
Give people health care and education. Give them an opportunity to succeed. It's not that hard. Most of us got it.
But the pro-military argument would be, okay, that is not going to work. Yeah. We will get fucked over by another country, and then no one will have an advantage. Like, we have to maintain a certain amount of power worldwide. Like, this is not my argument. Okay, I'm just saying.
No, but I would reject the binary on its face, because it's a thoughtful binary, and I'd love to answer it, but it's so much more geopolitical and filled with history and then technology. And so now I think if I am going to answer the question, it's like the threats that we're facing, the threat matrix is a way to look at it. Like, what are the existential threats? Nuclear war, and any kind of geopolitical, what kind of conventional war? Everything's online in terms of the way that countries are fighting. Yeah. It's all going online.
It's all transparent.
Well, I don't know if it's transparent.
It is in some ways.
But the point I would like to say, like, how is the Department of Defense not only focused on saving the planet? That's it. That's it. Just do that. Everybody wins.
I think it's complicated, man.
Well, of course.
I think it's way more complicated than we would ever understand. I think to be a military leader in 2019 and to be making decisions one way or another whether or not you attack people. Whoo, good luck with all that. Good luck with trying to figure out how to kill terrorists and do it live on television while the president's watching from the fucking Oval Office or whatever really happened.
I think he was golfing.
I think he was golfing.
Yeah, that was a whole weird situation.
How about the picture afterwards? You're like, I know what a posed picture looks like.
Dude, every single one of those pictures, it does look bad when every one of those pictures that comes out of the Oval Office is a bunch of white dudes.
Well, God wants you to wear makeup, and God wants you to sit right there.
That's right.
God wants that.
Right.
People don't talk enough, man. There's too many of us. That's a lot of what all this
I think
shit
you're
is.
leading. I think one of the reasons why you're doing so well is because you're leading the conversation about how the conversation should be.
Yeah,
I hope as evidence from what we're saying.
Well, I hope
here.
so too. I'm just happy if people enjoy it. But the conversations that we're not having enough of is face-to-face, one-on-one like this. Everyone's distracted. You can't get to know people over sound bites. You definitely can't get to know them through text messages or little tiny snippets of a conversation that they're going to have before they cut to commercial.
To get to know a person is very easy. You just look at their internet history.
You find out what kind of porn they like.
Oh my God.
Whether or not they like muscle cars.
It's my greatest bit. I mean, it's the idea that, Facebook and your social media is what you want people to think you're doing. Here's my family in the Bahamas.
Yeah.
But like, if you had a video of me melting down, just smoking weed and feeling my heart thumping and sweating because I'm having a panic attack, it's like, that's your internet history. Like you're looking up every lump that you find.
Mm-hmm. Right. And you go down weird rabbit holes. You find out about strange diseases. I was
very unhealthy.
all day today about
Mind
parasites.
fucking.
I was watching.
I saw your tweet about that. I was like, no, don't put it out there. Don't put it out there. It's interesting as hell. But it's terrifying because the idea of like, I always get so worried, especially that one, because it's like trail running is my favorite way to run.
I love it too.
And
that's why I posted it. Some lady got eyeball worms, man.
But kids are terrified to go outside. There's this amazing organization, Children in Nature Network. Everybody should discover and support and look up the work of Richard Louv, who's just written a new book about relationships. You'll love it, with animals and humans. And he wrote a book called Last Child in the Woods that is my Bible. It changed my life. And kids are afraid to go outside because there's ticks, there's Lyme disease, there's parents are afraid that there's kidnapping. No, there isn't.
There's definitely Lyme disease.
Well, yeah, but you just be vigilant.
Yeah, but Lyme disease is really significant.
It's horrible. I grew up in
several people.
I live in Rockland County. Me too. Horrible. Don't get me wrong. But we can't not send our kids outside.
No, I agree.
Cut your lawn and check your kids for ticks. Good night.
Yeah, you got to be vigilant.
But the kids have to stay out. They have to be outside to appreciate getting out dried.
Yeah, no, I agree.
The connection to nature, that's what it's all about. It all works together. The idea that we're drinking out of bottles that are made of petroleum. That's what plastic is. This is going to be here for 700 years.
Unless we melt it and make cool shit out of it.
Let's take some ideas. Let's go to the calls.
Do you know who Boyan Slot is? He's that guy.
The guy collecting the plastic?
Yeah.
Dutch kid?
Yeah, he's got a video.
He makes everybody else look
He's like 18.
unaccomplished.
Like 19.
He's like, I am 18 and I'm
Yeah.
going to take all of the plastic out of the ocean. Like, what was I doing? I was bashing mailboxes.
The first one didn't work, and everybody's like, see? He didn't know shit. He's like, yeah, that one is a prototype. We're trying to make it work. Look, the next one works. He's still only 20.
Let's cheer for him.
I know. People are hating on him.
Why are we tribal on getting rid of this horrible single-use plastic?
Well, because it's connected to ego, because someone who's 19 years old figured out how to do some shit that you've never figured out how to do. He's a better person than you.
Fine.
No, it's a game. It's a game.
I'm rooting for him.
No, you're not. That's why you're happy when his machine breaks. Like, ha ha.
Never.
Fuck him.
I don't know that mentality. I don't understand that mentality.
But you understand it.
I understand it, but I don't feel it. I'm not rooting for your pain.
Good for you.
If I don't like your opinions, I don't want you to get sick. I don't want you to even get your finger crunched in the garage door. I don't want you to have pain.
I think it's the same sort of
because of your beliefs.
Feeling. It's the same thing that leads people to be tribal. It also leads people to be jealous. It's the same kind of thing. It's like a pattern of thinking that's easy to slide into. It's like a well-oiled chute. You just
but you can
slide
break.
right in there.
You can you can name that and acknowledge
Yes.
it for your kids. That's what you're doing. That's what I'm doing, hopefully. Like, that's what that is. Don't
Yes.
fall into those veins. People, I think, by the way, are mostly good all day.
Yes.
All day. Most of my interactions.
Yes.
I'm walking out the door with this lady out of the bank, and we both walk at the same time. We're both like, oh, sorry,
Yeah.
both are faults. Have a good one. Little
Yep.
smiles. Like, that's most interactions that I have, at least. But
Yes.
I'm very attractive.
You're a handsome man. I agree with you, though. I think that is the case, and also it has to do with how you interact with those people. And we've all been guilty of being loaded up in one way or another, interacting with someone, and it doesn't go as well as it could have gone if you were in a better place when you met that person.
It's all about reactions.
Yeah.
That's the second time you mentioned that, and that's the most important thing I've learned in therapy and with my wife. It's if you choose how to react to a
Yes.
situation or a comment, and everything rides on that reaction, potentially your life.
I forget which book it is, whether it's one of those ancient philosophy books, but I never forgot this term. Nothing has any meaning other than the meaning that you give it.
Yeah, it's
Whatever it is, tragedy or a positive thing. Look, for sure, it's a tragedy. It's very difficult to.
it's not what
have
we
an
see;
automatic-
it's how we see it.
Yes, but talk regular moments in your life. Like the worst case scenario for a person is approaching any moment in their life and being like, "Woe is me! God damn it! Why does it always happen to me? Why?" Instead of having a perspective like, "Look how lucky I am that my real concern is someone keyed my car."
The reason, and I look at that and I say, why is that person always saying,
It's a pattern.
"Woe is me"? Why?
It's a pattern.
But why? Where does it come from?
It's a natural pattern. It's like
It's a role modeling. That's why you have to give people an opportunity to break out of that. We
Yes.
are so evolved. We are so far, probably too evolved, that we've created plastic bottles that we're killing ourselves. But
we're killing ourselves with plastic bottles.
we're 7 billion people, or it's just too many people.
That's a lot. Do you buy into the argument that the more westernized or the more advanced society gets, the population actually starts to decrease? Because there's certain cities that they point to where that's on the trend. I think Tokyo is one of them. But the idea is that as people, as a civilization advances, people decide to pursue careers before having children, and less people have children, and that there's some sort of a direct correlation with the amount of children people have versus the amount of technological advancement is around them, and the amount of education and
Yeah.
the level of the city.
Yeah.
Like if you're around a place like New
I
York,
think it's generally education
yes,
based.
yeah,
Generally
and
education based because
affluence too. I think affluence has something to do with it as well.
well, affluence usually comes with education.
Sometimes you could be a
Usually,
baller.
you could be you could have examples of people who came from absolutely nothing and had a
Yeah.
congenital heart defect and overcame it to become, a CEO of a
Well,
McDonald's
not-
and then have to step down because
Well,
they had an
people
affair.
start their own businesses and shit, you know.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, and nothing but certainly I have nothing but I look at someone who's started a business and ran a business from a dry cleaning store to whatever they're doing. My dad owned an insurance agency in Syracuse, New York. That's what my dad did. And my mom was a public school teacher. And it's like, so I saw the public and private sector. That was my role model.
That's a good combination too to grow up with.
And I had healthcare and I had nursery school. My mom was a early childhood. She had an associate's degree. My dad didn't go to college. Shout out to my pop, by the way. He just had a heart attack and ruined his eye.
How bad's his eye?
Can't see out of it. It's on surgery number 3. Dude just wrapped up 44 years as a ski instructor.
Ugh.
And he's a competitive cyclist. He's ripped off, broke every bone in his body. He's fucking man of steel.
What is the damage to the eye that doesn't allow him to see?
I can't explain it, but it's a laceration. He was on his blood thinners. He fainted and bounced his face off the table.
And
Lacerated his eye.
Has a big impact on whether or not he heals quick, right?
Oh yeah, and he's all filled with blood, so he can't see out of it. And my dad is my dad is a very physically healthy guy. So it's aging, man. It's tough. I mean, that's where my situation is. My mom and dad married 48 years, but that's my dad. I look at my dad, and he's a great story in America. He didn't go to college. He started his own insurance agency. Did well, supported us. We lived in the suburbs, Marcellus, New York.
You know what's crazy about America? It's only 300 years old, and the idea of a new America is out of the fucking question, right? The idea of someone coming along, the millions of years of life on this planet and the hundreds of thousands of years of being humans, in the 300 whatever almost years of the United States, if someone said we're going to start a new country now, and we found a new spot in New Zealand or Greenland or something, be like, fuck you. You can't do that. You can't do that today.
We'll see.
Do you think?
I think everything's changing.
Everything is changing, but if first of all, people would be super suspicious.
Well, yeah.
If you were going to start a new country, they'd go, that guy's just going to fuck all the women.
Well, there's a lot of that. I mean, that's that's a lot of the world right now.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of why you would start your own country. But
that's why that has almost probably always been the reason. That's religion. There would have to be
some leader, right? There would have to be someone who says, listen, this is how we're going to do this. We're gonna have like an open-ended constitution. We could amend it whenever we see fit. Instead of having a president, we'll have a council of elders.
I'm all for blowing up the system and redoing it to make it more equitable. However you describe that.
We're gonna need nukes, okay? Because the North Koreans aren't fucking around. The Russians are always shifty, and those Chinese, man, they're plotting things. I think they're gonna try to cancel our internet.
The fact that we haven't cancel our, you made it sound like they're the cable company. The fact that we haven't had an accident. Who is it? Schlosser. Eric Schlosser wrote this book and documentary. Is fascinating. History of accidents and close calls is nuts, and we gotta get rid of all nukes.
Yeah,
like all thinking people believe that.
It's so crazy.
That was a horrible statement. What I just said, by the way,
that's people?
Wrong. That's, by the way, a great example of a condescending thing for a person to say into a microphone. Well, all thinking people think blank. Stop it.
But it's also one of those things where it doesn't help to say it. Even if it is true, all thinking people agree with me. No one is going to go, wow, I don't want to be considered a non-thinking person, so I just agree with Pete.
Yeah, that's why I nailed it. It's like people yelling into a microphone, what is wrong with you? You must be a non-thinking person. I'm like, what? I don't want to be yelled at.
I dated this girl once when I was 21, and she'd get upset about shit. She was older than me. She was smarter than me, too. But she got upset once, and I said, will you just please relax? And she goes, no one who's upset ever wants to hear you saying relax. That doesn't work. And I thought about that. I was like, damn, she's right. Like, that doesn't work. Someone says relax. Relax doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Like, you don't go, oh, thank you. I mean, sometimes you do, but you have to be not very wound up, and you have to really love the person who's telling you to relax.
No, it's an absolute condescension.
Yes,
I've done that 100 times to my wife. She nails me every time. Every time.
I remember thinking as a 21-year-old savage going, oh, okay. She's right. That makes sense. Yeah, I don't want to hear that either.
But that's called being open-minded and being vulnerable. Being able to check your in with yourself as opposed to being this kind of authoritarian beast of, don't you tell me, this is my castle. Like, I don't understand that kind of, whatever you want to call it. I don't want to even name it. It's just an attitude that we have to, our generation of men is so much more vulnerable, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Than our parents. And so much more open-minded and sensitive, and it has nothing to do necessarily with sexuality. It has to do with human growth and evolution.
Yeah. And realizing that you're actually weak to pretend that you're strong.
Absolutely. The idea that that somehow
you don't feel things.
Addressing your PTSD as a combat veteran is somehow seen as weak. It's like, no, if you're taking on your worst nightmares, that's strength. And by the way, how do we measure strength? I mean, it's always about what you can lift, not the pain you can endure, which is why I think if you're measuring strength by gender, women can endure more pain. So that's one measure of strength, but more importantly, that's whatever you overcame in life, that's the measurement of strength, not how you can force yourself. I mean, I'm a small guy, so that's a small guy mentality. I talked my way out of every, my dad's like, just when you walk into that class, you make friends with the biggest kid in the class, and I've done that my whole life. So I just talk my way out, but.
Well, whatever works.
But not that in an authoritarian way, in a way that you're saying, in a way that you think about maybe.
When you say any thinking person agrees with that is a version of saying relax.
Oh, yes.
It's the same thing.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It's a perfect.
We both agree. It's the same thing.
No, it's a perfect analogy. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We could do a whole long story about condescending remarks, especially in marriages or any relationship. In this conversation, if I put you down in the way that you're thinking, it's like the whole conversation then changes. Like, oh, he doesn't respect my intellect, my experience, and it's like
the conversation gets gross.
Yeah, and effectual and damaging. Which
that's the easy way.
But that's how you sell ads. That's how you create ratings.
That's so crazy. this show does pretty good. We don't do that. You don't have to do it.
Exactly.
But the thing about like online conversations is that you don't have this interaction like we're having. Like this is probably more intimate than a regular conversation because we're in each other's ears, right? I prefer headphones.
Yeah, I wish all of life was this way. I don't want this to stop right now.
I do this all the time. It's too narrow focus, but it's good for conversations.
Don't tell me what I want. I will stay here and put anybody in those headphones.
Relax.
Calm down.
Relax.
Everybody
Any
just calm.
Person would agree with me. Relax.
Calm down, Joe. Will you calm down, Joe Rogan? That's my favorite thing to say when someone's not worked up. You're working with a young person in a corporate.
Yeah.
You know, it's serious. Or
Calm
CNN.
down.
And they're not at all worked up. They're like, hey, do you want me to send that over? Calm down, okay? Like what are you talking? I was totally normal.
What percentage of people that you worked with run Adderall?
Oh my God, I wish I know. I thought everybody around me was on something.
What do you think? The number
Antidepressants, I thought.
Would you think it would be a high number?
Adderall, I don't know. I don't know anything about Adderall. So, I know a lot about, and I hear a lot about Xanax and antidepressants and anti-anxieties.
Yep.
None of which I've ever put in my body.
Those are spooky. I think some people need them. I think for some people, they have a bad chemical makeup. I mean, this is just a fact. Just like some people have thyroid cancer, right? Some people have, there's a missing link. There's something wrong with the way their brain's firing. And this is just a biological issue because we're not, you don't
there's
pick your
situational
biology.
depression.
Sure, there's a lot of issues.
And Johan Hari writes about that in his new book.
Yep,
And there's been a lot of really great work written about it, academic research on it. And the academic research on neuropsychology, my understanding is that it's like we know so little about the brain. Mm-hmm. We're very early in trying to understand it. So these medications, like right now, dealing with like career, like my career transition,
right, and
thinking about running for Congress, dealing with my dad, that to me is not a reason to take an antidepressant. That's no, you work. Well, now you just hit it hard and you do what you do and you don't make excuses and you just work.
My friend Jordan Peterson had an issue where his wife was she had developed liver cancer. It was very serious.
Oh dear, yeah,
very scary.
I did not know that about him. I know of him and his work, but I did not know that.
She was very, very sick. And he, they've been together since high school. He loves her dearly. And he started freaking out. So he got on something. What was it called? Klonopin? Is that what it was?
Oh yeah. I'm familiar with that.
And
I've heard of it. No, a lot of people.
She had a miraculous recovery. Everybody's happy about that. But then he had a really, yeah.
That's amazing.
She had surgery.
Oh wow.
But he
Did she get a transplant?
I don't know.
Oh.
But he had a really difficult issue with the Klonopin. Really bad.
Oh, he used it to deal with that situation.
Yes,
and what was the issue?
Well, he was going through severe withdrawals, and he had to check himself into a rehab center.
Oh, yeah. I hear that's a very. I have a family member who did everything, including heroin, and it's so great to hear Artie on the show because I called up Artie when he was doing heroin to ask him how serious it was. He goes, "Let me ask you 2 questions." I go, "All right." And he goes, "Does he have like a good life, either a job or kids or anything?" I was like, "No, he's just a single guy." And he goes, "Is he shooting it or snorting it?" I go, "He's shooting it." And he goes, "I can't help you." Like that was the worst.
That's true, though.
I have so many Artie stories.
Yeah,
on the road with him for so long. But
it's so nice to see him doing well.
Yeah.
He's doing great. I mean, he really is.
He certainly seems so. Artie called me.
Man.
He's one of my closest friends. My wife and I spent a lot of time with him, and I love him to death. And his story is the most remarkable story. It's one of the most remarkable stories in comedy. He's one of the funniest. He's one of the kings of comedy. And he's a close brother of mine for a long time. So watching him with you, I can't wait to see him.
Yeah,
I got 17 numbers for him.
I'll give you the real one if he lets me. No greater storyteller alive.
He's up there.
He's no greater.
Yogi Berra was good.
His fucking stories are
Dick
incredible.
Cavett pretty good.
Shout out to Dick Cavett. He does with his fingers too. Like when Artie tells you stories, he does a lot of this.
Hey, where am I?
There's a lot of like movement with his fingers. He's got a little show he's doing. There's a lot happening.
He is a performer. He gets it. He gets it all. Oh yeah. He. I was waiting in the wings. He's going out. I open for him. I come back. They play The Who, which song that he came out to, and he just at his heaviest just falls back into me. And I had a brace. I'm a tiny, muscular guy, and I like push him back up and literally push him on stage. He's like zoning off.
That's hilarious.
Like falling asleep out there.
That's hilarious.
I mean, there's just so much to see him and his recovery should give everybody hope. It should give everybody hope. And
It's interesting too because I don't think
But
he's
back
ever
to the
been
drugs.
funnier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Artie is at the top of his game, and really excited to see him. And one of the funniest guys, and one of the most generous guys, man.
Yeah.
He helped everybody. It was too much. I would tell him, like, you can't. He was, dude, that guy supported so many comics in ways that were, like, beyond generous. The way that you do, by the way. By the way that you do.
I want to see his stand-up. I want to see it. I want to know where he's at. Because I know he's doing only gigs around the New York area, but I'm thinking about, if I have to go to the East Coast, I'm thinking about taking a trip. I just want to see
you there.
Yeah, because, like, see him now. It's like all the years that I've known him, he was always fucked up.
Yeah, I was on the road with him a lot of that time. I witnessed a lot of stuff. We would just be hanging out. He'd be gone all day. Like, where were you? Like, hooker all day. We're in Vegas by the pool at his cabana, and he wasn't with us. Like, where's the king, man? Is he ever going to come down?
Did you see the hooker? Maybe. I mean, was she
Yeah,
hot?
I wouldn't have hung out with us either. Don't get me wrong. But it was a nice day. We wanted to hang out with him.
He's got through on the other side. I just hope he could stay on this side.
Yeah, but the point is, Artie is not. He is an aberration. He is an exception for any number of reasons. He happens to be one of the most talentedly funny people that he just can't fail because everybody wants to be around him and be with him, and see him perform. But drugs in this country, whether they be antidepressants or the opiates, like that's something we should come together around as well.
Yeah,
and,
I think so.
And we're medicating, I think far too much. I'd love for you to talk to my friend Dr. Aaron Carroll, who's written so many. He writes for the New York Times. He's got a amazing YouTube channel. Beg you to have him on the show because he's a research expert, and there's so much to talk with him about in terms of all this stuff, supplements, and fasting, and nutrition, and you absolutely love him. I want everybody to know about his work.
Is he a doctor?
Yeah, he's a pediatrician at Indiana University School of Medicine. He contributes to the New York Times. He's got this YouTube channel with it's called Healthcare Triage. He's a really smart guy, and he does he's just really great at explaining research.
Is his thought that people are over-medicating?
I'm not sure. I don't want to speak for him.
Yeah, that's a tricky one, right?
I think it's those words. No, I mean, like, people get very resentful about that. Number one, don't tell me I'm a bad parent or a bad person. This works for me. Yeah, no, I mean, we've got to be careful. We've got to be very easy on the judgment with all that. Whatever, I kind of feel whatever gets you through the day.
Well,
but
I don't know how your brain works. Like, to pretend that your brain works like my brain, and that I know for sure that if I was inside your head, I would be thinking the way I think out here. It's impossible.
Amen.
I don't know what it feels like. Like, I know I have a baseline, right? When I'm healthy, I know who I am. I'm that guy, right? But could you imagine being someone else other than what you know and what you're comfortable with?
You can't. That's why you have to.
The chemical makeup of a different person.
You can't know what anybody's going through in their day.
Imagine if you were a woman and you were on your period. Imagine what that feels like.
Often. I've thought about that. I've thought about it all.
I never thought about it until just now.
Don't you have daughters?
Yes, but I never thought about myself having a period or having premenstrual syndrome.
Yeah, that sounds like very little fun.
PMS sounds like a real bummer.
Yeah,
once a month you're going to become a cunt.
The whole situation.
You let everybody know in advance. All right, I'm going to take calcium tablets. I'm going to do my best. But when the storm comes, imagine. I
try to just be aware of that, but my wife and I are usually at the same baseline regardless of what's going on.
It doesn't affect everyone.
I don't know if it does. Maybe it does, but it's something to be sensitive about because it's something that we don't have to deal with. You know what I hate, dude, is I got a vasectomy, and this idea that any guy would ever not do that is bizarre to me. It's the greatest thing. I highly recommend it. Population control and no more condoms, and your wife should never have to put a drug in her body or cut, tire tubes. That's horrific, unless I guess she's just giving birth maybe. But I'm very pro-vasectomy.
Do you think that there's going to come a time in America where there's too many people, where we have like a Delhi, India type situation?
I think that is the case in too many communities right now, in impoverished communities, that there's too many people for the resources. That's how you measure it. It's not, how do you measure too many people?
Congestion, overabundance of traffic. Like right now in LA, when I come home from the 405, when I get home from the airport, I'm driving home on the 405, I'm like, this is my first experience on it. It's 10 o'clock and it's bumper to bumper.
That's rough.
For miles and miles and miles. Like, where is everybody going?
That's another way to define poverty.
Well,
unless you're listening to a great conversation like ours.
But even then, it's not worth it.
How dare you?
It's not worth it being stuck in that. One thing is being stuck in it. The other thing is being stuck in it every day.
I mean, it's horrible for your body. It's horrible for your body to sit there. Dude, when I stopped commuting, I had this driving neck pain every day, 43. And like a knife every day. I stopped commuting, gone.
Yeah, gone.
Absolutely. Sitting in a car, you got to try to offset that if that's something that you have to deal with, because it's really hard. But I think that having right now in America, in many communities, there are not enough resources for the people that are living there in terms of healthy food and access to education and healthcare. Joe, that's how I define like morality of a society, how we take care of each other.
Sure.
And we all don't have the same access in this country. I urge people to study poverty and not get caught up in the tribalism of the argument of why people are in poverty. No, there's a long, really interesting and important field of study, and there's a whole bunch of anti-poverty people that I love talking to. And
what do you mean by anti-poverty people?
Like just working to, decrease poverty with using private, public, any number of different resources, solving the problem.
Yeah, that's one thing that I think morally we fucked up with not having health care available to everybody readily, easily. And if you're going to pay for things, if we're going to decide that we're a community, right? We're basically a community of 300 whatever million people. We got to two things. You got to educate people, and you got to take care of the sick. And you should have food figured out. Right, but we don't have. Two of those things, and one of them is terrible. The education system in inner cities is often terrible, right? The food thing is a fucking mess. Food stamps is a mess, right?
The education system in rural, in tribal communities. Nobody ever talks about tribal communities. I've done a lot of work with them, and I keep saying that, by the way. I'm no noble, just advocating for the type of stuff that I know that you do, and just trying to understand what they do and advocate for the solutions. And tribal communities and impoverished communities are all over this country, in rural areas and obviously in urban areas. We have a lot of it, and we can solve those problems. But being divided the way we are on not understanding the root of poverty, Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow takes on racial injustice and mass incarceration. You just read that book, you'll be a completely different person, understanding history.
Well, the things that we need to have in order to establish, drug war for sure.
I mean, when is that going to end? Where are we?
Yeah, well, look what's
Our
going
generation
on.
has an agreement about that. End that shit. Legalize all of it. Legalize it, regulate it, anything anybody wants to do. What we have been doing, what's going on in Mexico right now is nuts. Yep. It's crazy, and that's because of our demand for it. We're directly connected to their problems. That's just basic economics and commerce. Legalize it. It's not going to end the drug cartels. They're always going to be there.
Yeah.
But don't simplify this problem and don't demonize it. Name it and solve it. There's just been so much loss and pain. It's got to end.
Yeah,
whoever gets elected as president has to stop with this punitive justice bullshit where you punish people for their behavior. I just heard about this kid who got caught with weed in his car in high school, and his principal threw him off the golf team. And his dad was like, "Why would you do that? Why would you not let him do the thing that he loves? That's not. He's just going to sit around all day. He's doing a great thing. This idea of punishment is changing your behavior. We can get beyond that. I think we can get beyond with that.
We certainly can, especially weed for a kid.
No, but anything for kids, consequences for kids, spanking your kids is prehistoric.
It's prehistoric. But I mean, what you're talking about when it comes to this kid with weed is completely absurd. Do you think he would have got kicked off if he got caught having a shot at Jack Daniels? Would he have gotten kicked off a team for life if something happened at a party and he wound up having a shot of vodka with his friends?
Well,
no.
He also, I should say, he had a bucket of grenades in the passenger seat as well, Joe, and a bag of cash.
What kind of grenades? Love grenades?
No, that's what it was. You're absolutely right. That's all it was.
Stupid. Whoever made that decision is an asshole.
Well, yes, of course. Well, hold on. Their judgment is clearly wrong.
Yes.
But minimizing them as an asshole, it is an asshole move.
It's an asshole move. You're taking a kid and you're ruining his life.
And trying
Whether
to
or not you want to be an asshole or not.
Try to understand why that person made that decision in administration, why the system has that kind of punitive component to it. I mean, that's what our whole incarceration, the capital punishment, only in America, of all the civilized, that's so horrific. It's stupid and expensive. And now even, most conservatives now agree that is the case, and hopefully we're drumming it out.
Well, what about the death penalty for mass murderers? What do you do for someone like
doesn't matter.
Gain?
It doesn't matter what they did, Joe, because you can't prove if 1% of it, the numbers are like 4% of people who are killed were innocent. That percentage, everybody agrees, is way too high. Some people like if it was only 1% in the community that debates these issues. But as long as it's 4% of people are innocent, you can't have that system for that reason, regardless of the penalty, A. And B, no one's thinking when they're murdering someone about what the penalty for murder is going to be. That's not why they're doing it. It does not work as a deterrent. There's a ton of research on that. It's silly. It's silly that you think, well, if I'm not going to murder this person because I'm going to go to jail for life. That's not why you don't murder somebody. Nobody wants to murder another person.
But what do you do with that person? Do you just put them in a cage for the rest of their life?
No, you rehabilitate them.
You rehabilitate John Wayne Gacy?
Yes. Or
you take a guy who fucks kids and kills them and digs a hole in his basement and leaves the kids there.
If you can't rehabilitate him, you put him in a humane place cage. You don't kill him. That's my belief.
But you're killing him. You're just killing him real slow with life. You're separating him from freedom. And you're locking him up in a cage.
You have to separate him from freedom if he's raping kids. I agree with that.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you know for a fact
you can rehabilitate people.
But hold on, you're killing him either way. You're either killing him with nature and time, or you're going to kill him. So if you're going to leave him in this cage and he's innocent, that's almost worse than killing him. If you kill him, it's quick. If you're going to leave him in that cage and he's actually one of the 4% that's innocent,
I'm for letting him kill himself.
Okay, you're not going to let him kill himself.
Yeah, give him just be like, listen, here's a rope. Here's a rope. You can make a rope swing, and I'll give you a swing, and you can swing on it if you want. That's what I give that. I mean, I don't.
The problem is you're trying to find a binary answer to a messy question.
No, I don't think it's a messy question. My answer is no. I don't believe in the state. By the way,
if your
state that's the state executing people. Yeah,
by John Wayne Gacy, and they found your kid in the basement of John Wayne Gacy's house. You wouldn't want him dead?
I can't deal with that hypothetical.
I can't either.
I'm not doing that.
I'll think for someone else, and I'll say yes. John Wayne Gacy definitely killed a bunch of
Well, a lot of people whose kids. I don't think the people.
I mean, this is worst case scenario, right? We're playing a thought experiment.
No, absolutely. It's a great part. It's a thought experiment. It's a hypothetical, and I just wouldn't. If someone was in that situation, if they're a parent in Newtown, I think a lot of those parents. I mean, this guy who was killed in the Charleston church shooting. I don't say these maniacs' names into microphones, but the Charleston, the white supremacists wanted to start the Civil War, shot all those black people. Obama went down there and sang Amazing Grace. It's lovely. Remember that when we would recover from horrible disasters with the president singing Amazing Grace?
Yeah. Well, you remember 9/11.
But those people forgave that shooter. They forgave him for killing. All those black people forgave that white man and were the greatest role models of actual, Christians behaving Christian, by the way. And I think that you can forgive. I think that doesn't have to be a religious tenet. I think that you can forgive and you can rehabilitate. But I won't buy, in the hypothetical situation. Obviously, I would, by the way, I would I would kill anybody who ever threatened my family. I would have no problem with that. I'm not morally against that.
Yeah, it's a different thing than killing someone that you've got detained when deciding that their life is over.
Yeah, I don't think the state should be responsible for that, and the idea that we would give the state the trust.
The most horrific shit is when you find out that the DA withheld information that would lead to the exoneration of someone, or that they're unjustly incarcerated, and one of the cops knew about it.
All the time. That's one of the most horrific injustices in this country, and obviously it's got a racial component to it, and it's horrible.
Yeah.
And the justice system is obviously... That's a really interesting thing to talk about. And constitutional law is a fascinating thing for people studying. This idea that we argue about the Second Amendment, let's let constitutional lawyers, I think, discuss a lot of those things, and we should all understand that and be curious about it. But our Constitution is also silly. Let's remake everything. Let's have that conversation. There's so much better that we can do. Have a serious conversation about what kind of guns and bullets people can have. Not that they can have them or that they can't have. That's the conversation. That's where we should be right now. Everything gets regulated. Everything. There are trade-offs in healthcare. There are trade-offs in everything. But Americans now are so divided. They want everything that they want. That compromise is something that we don't do as Americans, much less in government. That's preposterous. The Democrats that demand purity or anybody that is doing that, you don't agree with me, you're wrong. Hold on. That's not, no, you don't have any relationships with people in your real life like that. Like my wife and I don't agree on a lot of stuff, but I love her. I adore her.
Well, it's what we talked about before. They're on teams, and you want your team to win, so you state
why do you want your team to win?
It's a natural thing with human beings.
All right. I agree with that.
What I'm saying about the gun thing, the most fucked up part about the messiness of the gun thing is that even if you made guns illegal, even if you said you can't have any bullets, you'll all go to jail. There's so many guns. You're not getting them all. It's not possible. There's more guns than there are people, which means there's more than 30 million guns in this country alone.
It's absolutely the most important point in the discussion.
That's a nutty number, man. You really stop and think about that number. You're like, what? Is that real?
But you don't really stop the behavior by necessarily creating certain laws about why someone might behave a certain way and shoot people. That's not going to necessarily change. What you do is you do limit the access to certain types of weapons and rounds of ammunition, right?
Yeah, well, the real question is why would someone do that, right? That's the number one question. Like limiting.
It's a harder question. It's a harder question to answer. The easier question to answer is make them less accessible.
Yes, if
to people who have problems that we can't figure out or solve.
If you could make them less accessible.
But the president will blame problems. I don't mean to get political, but there's no data on the video game argument. There's no data on that.
Well, the video game argument is interesting because I've had soldiers bring it up to me, including Dakota Meyer.
Yeah, I heard that conversation.
I'm willing to have it. I mean, I don't think it necessarily makes sense that people would act out in a certain way that's horrific because of a video game. But if they were already inclined to violence to begin with, maybe they already had a fucking short circuit, and then they get desensitized to violence in movies and violence in video games. Does that have an impact on them? I'm not the guy to answer that question.
Whether or not it has an impact on them
is a variable. It's a variable that I think merits discussion. I don't know if it's true or not.
Here's why I don't think it is. Because...
You don't think it merits discussion?
Well, let me make this point and then you decide if you think it merits discussion.
Okay.
The violent video games are played at far higher rates in Japan, and they don't have the gun violence we have.
It's a good point. They have a very different culture, though. The way
they don't have access to guns.
That's true.
That's it.
But they don't also have a lot of. They've had a few mass stabbings.
It's the access. I've shot guns. I shoot guns. I get I have nothing but respect for hunters. I grew up in a hunting community. But I mean, I don't know. I don't think that there's much past the conversation about accessibility to guns that can fire that many rounds that quickly, killing that many people. I don't think we have to get rid of those somehow. But I agree. How do you do it?
Yeah, that's the question.
That's the most important point. There's already 330. There's more guns than there are people. So what do you do? So by the way, I think you buy as many as you can back for sure. You spend a whole bunch of taxpayer money. Just help. By the way, there's a ton of people in a bind right now that have a rifle, but like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to afford my insulin. Let me get rid of this AK-47. To live another month. You buy some guns back. It's a good expenditure of money. And then melt them down and turn them into furniture for people. So
if you wanted to do that without changing the Second Amendment, like you just have a buyback where you just offer people the opportunity to make some money by giving their guns up.
Well, the Second Amendment has been interpreted wrong by the Supreme Court, in my opinion. I mean, it doesn't say that people should have... Until 2008, it didn't say that. Nobody thought that people should have a personal right to guns till the Heller case. But so I don't think you even need to talk about the Second Amendment. I think people just need to agree that these guns shouldn't be sold.
Well,
the ammunition.
Need to talk about the Second Amendment. I mean, it's a big conversation.
No, because people can have guns. You can have guns. The brick has a right to have guns. You just can't have these guns anymore. Well, no more of those ones. You can have all these guns.
Regional restrictions anywhere, right? Like
and they
in
work.
New York City, you can't have a handgun.
Yeah, they work.
Right?
You can't even. I don't think you can have you can have a switchblade in New York City. Yeah, Cyrus Vance, the DA there, is like terrified that they're changing. The federal government is changing the law because he knows that those gun laws in New York work really well. And by the way, people always make the argument, well, they have those gun laws in Chicago and there's a ton of violence. That's because Chicago's on the border of Indiana. It doesn't have them. Guns go across the border just fine. That's The gun laws work. They work.
Well, Chicago is also in the middle of a bitter drug war.
Well, yeah, I mean that's where the violence is coming from. But people should have less accessibility to those types of guns, like every other civil society in the world. Come on, this is like.
But it goes back to what you were talking about before, like that drugs, if they were legal, you wouldn't have that sort of a drug war.
Right, for sure, it's the root of most of the violence in the inner cities, and obviously in Mexico. Yeah, it's black markets, it's the illicit drug. Yeah, they're making tons of money on that.
What is the Second Amendment exactly as it's written?
The right to bear arms shall not be infringed.
So how do you think that the Supreme Court misinterpreted that?
That in the 2008 Heller case, everybody should just, I would plug the work of Eric Siegel, who's
a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Yeah, those commas get argued by constitutional scholars
for days.
Yeah, but the Supreme Court didn't decide until 2008 that Americans had a right to have their own weapon.
That's such a crazy statement. Like when you read it, it's so interesting because we're going back in time, trying to figure out how people in 1776 thought about guns and whether or not that applies to us. Because if it doesn't apply to us, we have to think, 1789, if it doesn't apply to us, we have to think, well, then who gets to decide? Like one of the reasons
we get to decide as a society on any of these things.
One of the reasons why it's so interesting.
Is what I want to believe.
One of the reasons why it's so interesting to read these things is like we have, for whatever reason, when things get written into stone or carved into a stone or written onto a document, like the First Amendment, like the freedom of expression, we have it. So we all agree on it.
Freedom of speech.
We don't want to change it. Freedom of speech, freedom of expression, whatever. We want to hold on to that. We want to keep it.
Sure.
Like this is our law.
All humans do.
And the Second Amendment, the right to have a gun. That's our law. We got it written down. Look, it's written there. So they'll study these ancient words like scrolls. Like they go over these scrolls and look at the commas and look at the words.
Yeah.
Shall not be infringed upon. What did they mean? That's fascinating. It
is fascinating, but I think that they didn't mean this, Joe. I think that
how could they? They didn't know what this is.
They didn't. And the whole gun thing is a racket to make money. That's what that is. It's a way you sell fear. Like home invasion is any family's worst fear. But it doesn't happen very much, nor does kidnapping, nor do a lot of these crimes that our generation of parents is helicopter parents terrified of everything,
That's true. That's true.
Not letting their kids go outside.
You're right.
Come on, thinking that your kid's going to get kidnapped, you don't know anybody.
Okay.
Who had their kid kidnapped.
But you're generalizing because home invasions do happen sometimes.
Right, but that's not how we should make laws.
But we don't have to exist like everybody's going to kidnap your kid or everyone's going to break into your home.
But I'm saying
the balance is that sometimes it's real. That's why people want to be able to have guns, because sometimes someone can break in your house and people have defended their house and their property with guns.
Sure, but is it a realistic threat? Or is it something that the gun industry creates these amazing ads and scares the shit out of people?
Oh, come on, man. Crime is real. You know, whether they
crime
make
is real,
ads or
it's
not,
certainly
crime
real.
is still real.
I think the clear point is the reason why we have so many guns in America is because there's so much money to be made off of them. I think we could absolutely limit them and regulate them and have a thoughtful conversation. I think that's where most people are at, although I hate that generalization.
There's something to that, but there's also something to the reason why we have so many cars. People like them.
I'll have that conversation. We should get rid of all the cars.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we're not. Don't get me wrong.
Ridiculous. Why should we get rid of all the cars? Do you not like freedom, or do you have a better solution? Are you going to?
I don't have a better solution, but if there should be one, or I think that we are killing ourselves with all the cars. The pollution is
okay, but you can
make
get an
them electric.
Car.
Yeah, then that's fine. I think that would be fine. I have a Chevy Volt since 2012. I have solar panels. I'm trying to be the change I want to see in the world. If I'm coming off as I'm a complete hypocrite on all of it. I eat meat and I do all kinds of things. I think having a thoughtful conversation about guns and why they're a huge part of our culture and not another culture, the way that other cultures and countries regulate their weapons, the problems that they have, are problems. Sure, we should talk about mental health. But the problem with that conversation that people don't want to have is everything costs money. That's why you have to pay taxes. Paying taxes is the price of civilization.
What does that have to do with mental health?
You have to pay for people to help people.
Right.
You can't advocate in government, Republican or Democrat, for this is what, unfortunately, Trump and Republicans have advocated. Let's get mental health solutions to the violence. Let's do that. And everybody's behind that, except they cut the Obamacare programs that funded mental health. It's just, you have to spend the money providing mental health. It is a problem. It should be addressed, but it's not. The main issue is definitely the guns and the bullets in them.
Well, the main issue is the person that's capable of shooting people with the guns and the bullets.
No, it's the guns and the bullets.
The guns and the bullet are inanimate objects. Without a person pulling the trigger, we're talking nonsense here. They're not going to just shoot themselves. The main problem is someone who's willing. The main problem is someone who's willing to grab the gun and shoot people, right? We agreed. We both agree there's problems with having guns.
No,
but don't you think the main problem is the person who actually shoots people?
I think that in every other country in the world, they don't have this problem because they don't have the gun. That's where I start and end on the argument.
Okay.
Why is that wrong?
That might be the case, that they don't have the guns. But there are places that do have guns and they don't have a lot of mass shootings. Canada's one of them, right?
They don't have the type of guns we have up there.
They have a lot of guns.
They do, but they don't have AK-47s with unlimited rounds. They don't have that's crazy.
Well, do you think they have more
by the way,
limitations?
I've shot those guns. They're awesome. I get it.
Okay. Do you think they have more or less limitations to what firearms they're allowed to have in Canada?
I believe the Canadian gun laws are far stronger, more regulated.
They just tried passing some really recently. Trudeau announced something that was going to severely limit, this is very recent, severely limit the type of firearms you could have, including things that can have multiple rounds in chambers, and certain types of guns that are used right now as hunting rifles, since there was a big pushback about that. This was really recently.
There's always
see if you can find that?
The conversation about like the freedom, like the Second Amendment to me is, it's just your interpretation. Fine, whatever your interpretation is fine.
That's what's interesting.
But there's a human impact. It's a healthcare issue, and it's so extreme. It's really, if you want to know the answer to healthcare issues, you should talk to public health experts. They have those answers. They have the research. But
hold on. What research on what?
Well, they don't have enough research on. They don't have enough research on gun violence.
What are you
unfortunately.
talking about then? I'm
talking about if you want to know the solutions for what is impacting and creating death by any measure, accidental death.
Right, but we're talking about gun violence, right?
Right.
What healthcare professionals have the solutions to gun violence?
I think a lot of healthcare solutions. I think certainly surgeons have argued for why certain ammunition is destroying the inside of the body and unsurvivable. I think public health officials have argued, certainly pediatricians all argued, this idea that you can't ask a parent if they have a gun in the house because the gun lobby is against that because they're building this conspiracy that the government is going to track your gun. That's terrible. Your pediatrician has to ask you, do you have a pool? Where do you keep the poison? Where are the guns? Because God forbid, you're not responsible enough or educated enough to know that kid might accidentally get that gun, and it happens all the time. There's a rule against that. Yeah, public health officials and doctors and physicians are pretty much on the same case with this issue. These guns, and mental health, I think experts too. I don't know. Maybe there's a large disagreement, and if there is, I'm happy to be wrong about this or any dumb shit I've said.
Well, what you're saying is that these public health officials would be able to make these guns less lethal by banning certain types of ammunition because it's destroying people, and checking to see if the parents know if they have a gun or where the gun is or how it's treated, how it's locked up, like that they should. I mean, how do you feel like public health officials could have any impact on that?
Well, public health experts are, their entire responsibility is to keep people safe from sickness and death.
But if you have any bullets at all, they're lethal, right? So do you want to have bullets that are less lethal?
I think that could be a law for sure. Why not?
Less lethal.
Yeah, to human bodies. Yeah, we shouldn't be killing each other with bullets all the time. A bullet will stop anybody, a blunter, but whatever it is. I don't understand the arguments about ammunition. But the point about
but you brought it up. That's why I brought it up.
Fine. Public health experts will look at what is creating sickness and death.
Okay.
Car accidents.
What I'm saying to you is that I think it's disingenuous to say that public health officials have an answer to why we're having so much mass violence. I don't think anybody has an answer. I think we're terrified. And I think we could say if they didn't have guns, they wouldn't be able to do it. And you're right. And I could say if these people weren't mentally handicapped or filled with, I shouldn't say handicapped, mentally compromised, filled with
all kinds of demons, all kinds of demons.
All
Agreed.
sorts of different medications that are fucking with their judgment.
Maybe,
abuse, all sorts of
Tons
trauma
of
they
abuse.
experienced in childhood. There's a lot of factors.
Sure.
No one has any idea why someone who is abused and who's fucked up is capable of making that leap. We have some thoughts on it. That's all. We have some thoughts on it, and we talk about it endlessly. And you're right. If no one had a gun, there would be no issue with that. You wouldn't be able to mass shoot people. But would we still have fucked up people that are lashing out trying to hurt people? I think we would.
Of course, we always will, but we have to fund mental health. We have to fund
no one's arguing
research.
with you.
Yeah, a lot of people are.
No, I'm not. I think you should. I think we should. Not only should we
people don't
completely
want
change
government
the way
to
we
spend
think
money.
about mental health, it should be a top priority.
Yeah.
I think we should think about having 4-hour work days being mandatory.
Done.
I think we should help people. I think they just did an experiment Microsoft did in Japan, in fact, and they found that a 4-day work week rather increased productivity by 40%.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, I don't know, and maybe this is their culture, or maybe this is a specific instance, the type of people that would get a job at Microsoft. But, what you're dealing with for most people is beaten down shells that are tired
But tie all that together, go back to the gun argument, argue for the 4-hour work week and any other type of benefits that civilized nations around the world, especially in Scandinavia, have. Studying that culture is really interesting and what they do.
Yeah.
And you realize that there's any number of things that you can do to help people. And how do you have to be able to fund those solutions, and people don't want to do it.
Right. People don't want to pay more taxes, but they also have a distrust in the way the government spends their money. So it becomes a catch-22.
I'm sorry.
Even if they wanted things to be better, they don't trust the government to spend their money. Like if you work hard and you make X amount of dollars and the government wants 45%
always a fair argument, but there's not necessarily a better way. Fine, I give you that argument. But we have to come together as a society and agree this is how we're going to spend money on the fire department, on schools, and so on.
Yeah, well, no one's arguing.
Yeah, but the rest of the world, why is so many other places, Scandinavia, happier than us? One of the reasons is we have to worry about getting shot. We should not have to worry about that. We have to worry about health insurance. We should not have to worry about that. We have to worry about paying for our education. Those are things that other people in other countries don't have to be as concerned about. That they're happier, they're more relaxed.
Well, they're also way smaller. It's like Idaho versus the entire United States of America. And you're right.
But that's not how you study. Socioeconomics says something different about the size of the country. It matters,
sure.
but
it's a huge factor. It's a factor in the way people behave. I mean, they've done studies where they've taken cameras and they put them on opposite ends of the street, and they can tell by how fast people walk, and they can tell by how many syllables they say in a minute exactly the number of people that are in that city.
Yeah.
There's a direct correlation between large groups of people
Yeah.
and hostile behavior, fast thinking, moving quickly, talking quickly, being impatient. All those things contribute to a less healthy society.
Sure.
When you deal with a small country that has less people, you have less of that.
But it still doesn't change the idea, even if we disagreed on that looking at how other nations, societies, neighborhoods, by the way, forget about that. Don't make it about America. What's this city over here doing? What's this community doing over here? Mayors are working together really effectively to solve problems in cities. They have these unions all the time, these comings together, and they're doing a lot of good work. Communities can copy other communities, but if you look, we so often talk about our national system, and that's generally what we're talking about with many of these issues here. You look at Scandinavia, people are happier there. Why?
I don't know if that's true. Why is that true?
There's so much
but why
research
is that true
in it.
that they're happier? What does that mean?
Because if you don't have to worry...
It's a big, giant generalization. There's got to be some depressed people in Scandinavia.
There are, of course
so are
there
less?
are. Right? Don't get me wrong, dude. They're horrible. They're suicidal. They have all kinds of problems.
There's places in the United States that are happier than other places in the United States.
Yeah, it's access to education and healthcare. You can't
It's also environment. It's also the beauty of their surroundings.
Absolutely.
It's also whether or not it's a small town or a large city.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, there's places like Boulder, Colorado, super healthy, happy places.
Yeah.
But there's only 100,000 people there.
Right. That's how
and it's gorgeous.
I think we have to radically change the way that we live in our communities. And I think there's so much interesting conversation we had about sharing everything. You know, the car comes, picks you up whenever you need it and all that. You can still have your own car, whatever, but just the idea of ride sharing, home sharing, and communities.
Home sharing?
Like,
you're gonna share your house with somebody?
You could through technology, you could just have, no, you're not going to share your house with somebody, but in a community. Like a kibbutz of the future, surrounded by, there's a place called Serenbe down south. It's got biophilic design and everything is like renewable. The way they live, everybody is just how you described. It's like a small town. Everybody's always on foot, walking, communicating, surrounded by nature, exercising.
Well, it's definitely better when you can get that. If you can get that. It's hard to sustain large groups. I mean, there's no getting away from the number of people we have here, you know, and then it's like also like
You're
the
absolutely
smaller
right.
the group, the less minds you have that you interact with.
You were
too.
talking with somebody that's scientist who lives in the van. It was a fascinating
Chris
conversation.
Ryan.
And I feel like
That's
you
my
made
boy.
the point about, he's great. It was great. I was sealing my parents' basement listening to that show. And he talked about, or you did maybe, Moore's Law? Is that what
I think he talked about it as well.
That was pretty interesting. I never heard anything like that. But about, it's only, you have to have a certain amount of people before kind of chaos. Or corruption.
No.
What is it?
That was Dunbar's number. Dunbar's number is 150 people. Moore's law is the law that pertains to technological innovation,
technological
improvement.
Yeah. The
Dunbar's number,
the rate of improvement of how technology, and that's going straight up, and that's fascinating. And Andrew Yang understands that, and Joe Biden doesn't. That's a huge issue.
Dunbar's number is the amount of people that you can keep semi-intimate relationships with, and it seems to have a direct correlation between ancient tribal structures. So
I'm fascinated by that.
They think it's about 150 people, and more or less, I'm sure people vary, like they vary in everything else. Intelligence, height, people vary in everything. But this number seems to be fairly consistent, that you can't really have more than 150 people in your life.
Don't you think Thanos was
still
right?
Being away with them. Yeah. No, that's the problem with that movie. Thanos had a point.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, he's a piece of shit, but he had a point.
The way he went about it was wrong.
Yeah, he was a dickhead. He killed a lot of people.
He snapped and everybody died.
And then he wanted to live on his own island like an asshole. He has a whole planet where he lives on it.
And the sun would always set on his face.
Yeah, fuck him.
And James Brolin.
I was glad when Thor fucked him up. Spoiler alert.
My daughter got to interview the co-directors as part of my old shows. My favorite
It's Josh
memory.
Brolin, by the way.
What did I say?
James.
They're both handsome.
They are.
But yeah, Thanos. But the idea, that's the idea of balance. Do you think about that? Like all this stuff that we use and we consume and the way that we live, I think about that a lot.
Yeah. I do, and I'm happy when someone like Boyan Slot comes around that has like a real legitimate solution that could be implemented at large scale and could eventually be a gigantic solution. Not only that, but a source of resources. So
but what about just
take
sustain
this plastic, and this plastic, instead of being a detriment, can be used to work at certain things. Maybe the money could be used from the sale of that plastic and it would go to charitable causes. Maybe it could actually be a positive net benefit to the earth if someone comes along with some technology that could do that.
Why do we have in this country an argument about the future of energy and the way that we live and how to create a better renewable future? Like, I have no idea why we're arguing. Everybody wins. Everybody's going to make a shitload of money. The argument is that if you invest in a Green New Deal, that is a socialist idea, or that's a bad idea in any way. No, everybody will get rich or we're all going to die.
I don't think that's what the problem is.
What do you think of that binary?
Well,
everybody.
I don't think we're going to die either. I think fear-mongering is not helping anybody either. I think
you're right about
things
that.
are going to get shittier. I mean, I think that's probably why Trump wanted to buy Greenland. He's like, I got an idea. Let's get up there. And
such a move.
See, but it would have been amazing if he pulled it off.
However much time got spent.
Turned a corner.
It was brilliant because
it came out of nowhere too.
Well, because he really knows how to play the media. Yeah. He's like having a bad day. He's like, I buy Greenland. How does that sound? Okay.
Sounds pretty good.
And then we talk about it all day. On the radio and on TV, and it's like, well, we just lost everything that you and I just discussed. All these really important issues.
Not really. I think people are gonna solve a lot of the problems. There's gonna be thoughtful people that are geniuses that are gonna figure out a lot of our problems. They're gonna solve them. Doesn't mean we should give up. And I think there's gonna be a way that they're gonna be able to extract carbon from the atmosphere. They have many different prototypes and many different theories that they're working on right now.
Yeah. I don't mean to sound negative. I'm on board with solving the problem. I just don't want to argue. I don't want to argue about the problem. I want to have really thoughtful discussions about the solutions and how we can do it. But fossil fuels have to go rapidly.
Yeah. The problem is also that
I don't know how you do that, but they have to go rapidly. It's hard.
The problem is also that the conversation has become ideologically driven.
Yeah.
Right? If you're on the left, you think climate change is of the utmost importance. If you're on the right, you're supposed to at least slightly dismiss it as
I think that's a bizarre binary. Of course, it's the most important thing.
But it's what we do with everything. What we do with abortion, what we do with murder. What we
but
do
the
with
planet,
everything.
it's the planet.
I understand.
That's how I always put it. Like, people will be sensitive about sexism or racism. Oh, easy for you to say, white guy. No, I'm not dismissing what's most important directly to you. I'm looking at it in the aggregate of our species. It's the planet. The emergency bells are ringing. We have to stop burning fossil fuels. We have to.
Dude, it burns here every couple months, like crazy.
It's horrific.
Like
it's like what we think of a hellscape should look like on film. Where you guys are living through it.
Dude, I've been here for 20 plus years, 25, I think, 25 years. It's never been like this, where every 4 or 5 months a fire erupts. And there's a feeling that you have when a fire erupts that's real weird, man.
Explain it, because I think it's important to people.
I've been evacuated 3 different times. And there's a feeling that comes over you. Like, first of all, there's, in my case, I can only speak for myself, there's a releasing of any, like, no importance is attached to anything other than your kids and your wife. And just get the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
The dog, whatever you got to do, get the fuck out of there and realize, look, you're a human who's doing well, living in the United States of America. You already got 4 aces. Just get the fuck out of there. Stay alive. Don't worry about your house. Don't worry about your car. Just get out. Go. That's number 1. And 2 is the intense fury of nature. And when I saw the last ones, when I got evacuated last year, our fucking neighbors, 3 of the houses burnt down right across the street from my house. So here's my house, this house, this house, this house are gone. And there's hundreds of houses all throughout Malibu. There was like 600 houses burnt to the ground, man. And it's a fucking terrifying scene. There was a woman, we played a video, there's a woman who was trying to drive to go get her horses, and she was driving through a firestorm, screaming and filming it at the same time. And the fucking
What's
embers
she doing
are
filming
flying
it?
I think she had one of those dash cam things on.
What? Oh, well, I
People
mean,
have those.
but you're talking about one community out here, and you're talking about really affluent people, so they should care. Their homes, it's their property. But I'm talking about Katrina, and like it's hurricanes, it's wildfires, and the impoverished nations are suffering the most because they're burning the most fossil fuels and they have the least resources, and we, meanwhile, are having everything we want. And I think that that's like also kind of just a holistic spirit. We should use less. It's a philosophical debate for sure, but we should have it. We can use less and be happier even in so many different ways. I'm not sure.
I don't think that's going to stop the fires, though. I don't know what you're saying. The fires are coming because it's getting warmer. Look, man,
no, it's climate change is the issue I'm talking about, and it's people
using less.
living.
It's like maybe, but
sustainability or reusing.
The problem is gigantic. The problem needs to be addressed on a global scale.
Green New Deal. It's the whole thing.
It's not addressed on a global scale. China and India and all these other countries that are still polluting at a fucking rapid rate, they're not contributing to this
Every
concept.
one of those countries is in the Paris climate.
Yeah.
Every one of them. Mm-hmm. Only we aren't.
Yeah.
And we just made it official. And it's a dagger to the planet. But do not give up and fight every day to create solutions and care about it. That's what we should be in the streets for. Read Bill McKibben.
I don't know if we need to be in the streets for this, but I think you're right.
You don't think that we should be out in the streets?
Do you think that's really going to stop people from burning coal? Do you think that's going to stop people
from...
I
think it's working. I think the divestment movement has worked really, really effectively. 350.org is a very effective organization to get the fossil...
Right, but you're talking like I'm arguing with you.
I'm sorry.
I mean, I'm not.
Dude,
I think we're all on this together.
Joe, that's my tone. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. But it's like whenever I say something, you talk like what we're talking about here is there's a bunch of different solutions, but no one's arguing with you saying don't do that one or don't do this one. What I'm saying is we got a real gigantic problem globally, and to just do less is not going to stop these fires. We're already in it. It's already happening. Like, we have to figure out a way to protect ourselves.
You're absolutely right. That's actually probably the smartest thing that either of us has said in this conversation. It's my issue, obviously. Yeah, we have to adapt. We have to find solutions to adapt and ways to live. And that's what I'm talking about in terms of sustainability and biophilic design and architecture and just infrastructure in general. Like, we have to do that. I feel like that's our responsibility to our kids.
We have to be mobile. one of the things that always freaks me
Like
out.
nomads.
I study a lot of ancient history, and I'm really interested in these civilizations that they find, like when, they for some reason, like a storm takes away some water and moves to a different place. They find some structure underneath the water they didn't know existed before, and you realize, like, oh Jesus, there was a city here at one point in time.
Right.
That's happened several times
Pompeii?
throughout history. Yeah, I mean that's a good one. That's a volcano one.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of these places that used to be like during the time of the Bering Land Bridge, right? There was the water was much lower, and that was only like, what was that?
I don't know.
12,000 years ago, I think. There was
When
a
the continent
whole
north and-
country. Like, people don't know that was a goddamn country. There was a country that the way we describe it today.
Wait, there's a
between
nation
Syria,
of people living?
No, they called it the Bering Land Bridge.
Wasn't
was
that
a place called Beringia. Like, I didn't even know this. I'm listening to this book on tape by my friend Steve Ranella about. It's called The American Buffalo. I think it's called The American Buffalo.
Sounds
Is that
awesome.
what it is? It's an amazing book, but it's about the history of wildlife and Native Americans and what changed, and like that these people who migrated here from Siberia, how long it took them to do it, and that it wasn't even migration. We think of it as migration, but it wasn't. They were just following food, and it was a slow process over thousands of years. But we think of it as like they're going across a bridge. It wasn't a bridge, man. It was a fucking country.
Well, that's what's happening.
There was so little. Look how big it was. There was so little water because of the Ice Age,
Right.
that you could walk through this Beringia area. It was fucking thousands of miles wide.
So
it was huge.
One of the issues in Central America is just what you're describing. It's climate change. Right now in Central America, the coffee growers can't grow their coffee. They can't grow drugs, by the way, and they can't grow their coffee. So what are they doing? What you just described. They're walking up through Mexico, and they're being demonized. The only thing they're guilty of is they can't grow their crop.
Well, we have this thing that we're doing
but
now.
that's because of climate change. Forgive me. That's because
Yeah.
the soil down there is drying up. That's what it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's forced migration. And talking about adaptation, to me, that's the most interesting thing about what your point was about how do we adapt to people migrating away from these areas and how do we live in America on the coasts and in California? Like, that's really...
You're gonna have to move. All those assholes that have houses
Upstate
on
New
the
York,
beach
baby.
in those pokey things that stick into the ground.
The stilts, the giant...
Those people
Yeah.
are hilarious.
Yeah. Who's buying that house?
Those houses are like $10 million, man.
I feel that way to some extent by even going up in like a sky rise at Sirius XM or to the 37th floor. I'm like, this is silliness.
Silliness.
Why am I all the way up in the sky? I don't want to work. That brought me a sense of unhappiness and I don't want to live. I don't want to work or live in the sky. These people that live way up. I don't like that.
It's a great view, though. That view is sick.
Yeah, but
it can really give you a little brain tingle and make you excited about writing. You're like, look at that! Like all those people. Like, I'm so high up here.
Ants everywhere.
These ideas.
Yeah.
I feel like anytime you can get some sort of surge of ideas, it can be translated into some sort of a push of creativity.
Always.
Yeah, and sometimes
it's lovely when it happens.
A great view is a kicker. It kicks you in the balls and gets you going.
I think, like, what's your best one?
Views? I'm
like
a
where you've
mountain
had
person.
one of those.
I'm a mountain person. I love mountains. I fucking love it, man. Fuck paintings. Paintings can suck a dick.
Oh, is that right?
I like looking at mountains.
Is that right? You won't...
I mean, paintings are cool. I like paintings.
But
This place is filled with artwork.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that, to me, there's no comparison. Like a mountain view with a lake in the background, that to me is like, whatever it is about my DNA, that to me just draws me in.
Where's the place you were in nature that you felt the most just happy, connected?
Oh, I've felt it a lot of different places.
Great answer,
but I'm
first of all.
a big fan of Colorado's mountains. I'm a big fan of the mountains of Utah. I love mountains.
That
Montana.
park in Vancouver was for me.
Park in Vancouver.
Have you ever been
part?
in that big park? It's like Park City. James, could you look up that? I'm so
This is
embarrassed.
like bigger than like Central Park?
Yeah, I think it's bigger. I think the same guy might have designed it.
Oh.
But it's got beach,
That's
mountains,
such a good move.
lakes.
That's one of the best moves about New York City. They got a giant park in the middle of it.
That was a brilliant.
Smart.
The guy who designed it is a fascinating guy. I forget
that's
his name.
so smart. It changes everything.
Yeah.
When you're in that park, you're like, I know this is bullshit. And it's not really nature.
found
It's
myself.
like nature trapped, but it's good enough. It's good enough.
By the way,
There's
that
trees
was
and
so
dirt.
well described.
Yeah.
Nature trapped. I feel
Yeah.
that way. It's by the way
It's
why
not-
I feel on resorts. When I go to resorts, I'm like, this isn't it.
Yeah.
This is not Turks and Caicos right here where I'm at.
Nature is only nature when it's connected to bears and shit. Like if you just keep going in the woods, something can eat you. If it's not, then it's nonsense.
Yeah.
And what you're in well, there's one thing though. They do have coyotes now in Central Park, which is really amazing.
What is the concern about them? We've got
they're
coyotes.
Little wolves.
Yeah, but what are they doing?
Wolves.
And people are like, we get like coyote alerts.
They'll bite your kids.
Where they really, forgive my ignorance, folks, if you just lost your dog to a coyote, now I feel like a douche.
Well, people's kids do get bitten.
Well,
and I mean, they will take people out upon occasion.
But
a woman
I mean,
who was 19 years old in Vancouver, in fact, was killed by
Stanley Park.
A pack of coyotes.
Shit happens.
I know, but that's why you worry about them in your city. You don't want them eating your kids.
Fair enough. You actually answered
Look
my
at that
question.
fucking park, man.
That park is where I had an experience. I mean, I agree with you. The mountains and the Rockies in general, Colorado has got to be.
Yeah, parks are close. That's close because it's kind of like attached to the water. You know, the ocean's there, and you got all the trees and shit.
Oh man,
the real
what a beautiful
deal
place.
for me though is like when you're out in real wilderness and you run into real wild animals.
No human creations is my I want to see and nothing that's created by a human. That's my full heaven.
Yeah,
that's where I'm most at peace.
There's something about like a campfire and you're staring up at the night sky and you're cooking dinner with your friends and just no one around for miles, man. It's just peace.
Rolling down the Allagash in a Rowland Thurlow canvas kayak, fly fishing away, not catching anything.
You just see stars.
Yeah.
Why would you not want to catch anything?
No, that's what happened to me.
Oh.
I was the place that I went in Maine that we're describing way out, and we went on a fly fishing trip where I learned how to fly fish and caught zero.
Maine's tricky. There's a reason why Stephen King's from Maine, and every one of his books is horrific.
Why? What is it?
It's horror up there.
What is it? I got this scar in Maine. I split my finger there.
There's no people, man. There's no people.
Right.
Like a bunch of comedians, me included, had a joke. We would do bits about how you drive from Boston, and there's this one stretch before you get to Bangor, where Stephen King lived.
I did a gig there. Husson College.
No radio. There was no radio.
Yeah.
You would hit the scan button, and it would never find a signal. And you're like, what? And there was a full hour, I think it was 60 miles or so, 55 miles or so, where there was no gas stations. So you'd get gas, and then you're on your fucking own for an hour of driving.
Love it.
And it was weird, man. But there was something about the people that you would run into along the way. It was disturbing. They didn't have enough contact with people. You know how like people get rickets and they get scurvy when they don't get vitamin C? Well, people get some weird shit when they don't meet enough people. When you're just out there in the woods with your uncle and your cousin and that's it for your whole life, and then all of a sudden you're 24, listen to me. That ain't a good combination either. That
weird. Is a really great idea for a bit. I mean, that guy, his social problems when he comes into Fifth Avenue, he's got some weird interactive or lack of social.
Yeah. But he didn't get the right diet.
But that being said, now the measurement isn't can you get a radio connection, does your phone still work? And I think everybody should, I mean, it's very dangerous, so not everybody should, but you should, if you can go with a guide, like that's real, to me, that's real human connection.
Yeah.
That's where we're supposed to be, and you should have that experience. We're so connected to our screens. I feel like that's got to be bad, but the research is not.
That we're connected to our screens, it's got to be bad.
It's an interesting conversation.
No, the research is pretty solid. It's bad from you've read Jonathan Haidt's work about it?
I've read
The Coddling of the American Mind. You should read it because it's really interesting. It's really interesting because when he discusses...
Jonathan Haidt, yeah, he's great.
Okay, but it shows the consequences of these young kids that are getting involved in these screens. You think that's any different with us as adults to be indoctrinated into this world of social media and constantly on our screens? They're showing a direct correlation, particularly with young girls. They're very vulnerable because of the pressures of social media and people talking shit about each other.
I've seen it, dude. I got a 14 and 12-year-old.
Bullying, and you're seeing a big uptick in self-harm, big uptick in suicide. These are measurable
I think the data is pretty good on it. I'm not quite sure. You mentioned
the data is better than
he wrote
climate
that book.
change. It's as good as it gets. The data shows a clear line.
I don't know about that. I think it's a different
it shows a clear line from the invention of the iPhone to massive.
But that could just be a correlation with something else.
What a coincidence that smartphones, who every fucking kid who's 11 years old and up now has a smartphone. And every kid that you're looking at from before had a giant decrease in suicide,
It may be right. I would push back on that it's stronger than climate science.
It's pretty fucking strong.
Okay, yeah. I think you're probably right. I certainly want to do something about it. And I think it's a really important issue. That's why connecting to nature is the answer to that. And I mean, my kids have their phones in their faces all the time. I think it's terrible for so many different reasons, but I'm just not sure exactly. Number one, our generation of parents are really struggling with how to solve that. I mean, what do you do?
Well, now we're admitting it's real, okay? So admitting it's a problem. So there is real data.
I completely admit it's a problem, and I do think there's a lot of data. I'm just not sure about it.
I don't know if going to the woods is going to help it. It's going to make you feel a little bit better while you're in the woods. But I don't think it's going to overall.
You're not right.
There's a problem having these goddamn devices where you're constantly addicted and checking it, and you're getting these little dopamine hits.
Yep. Jonathan Haidt wrote that with, I think, or he wrote a book about that with Lenore Skenazy, who also advocated that this is the problem with parents being worried about their kids too much.
Sure, helicopter parenting. Jonathan Haidt talks about that too, letting kids. He's talked about his own fear of letting his own kid walk his way home, and
it's real.
His kid was real young, and he got lost, and it was terrifying for a short amount of time for them.
But he built a life skill, probably.
Yeah,
he didn't die.
It's all an interesting conversation about who we are now versus who we used to be, and is it better?
I think I don't know. It's a fascinating conversation. I do think that our generation, like our kids, we have more of a disconnection to what their experience is than any generation before us. That's my argument. I don't know if that's true, but like, what did our parents have? TVs. What do we have? Upgraded TVs, more channels, microwaves. But it was a gradual change. Telecommunications gradually changed from beepers to phones, but then bam, back to Moore's law, and it's just. And how do we react to all this? How do we parent in this? How do we live in this? People are dying looking at their phones in their cars. A lot of really serious consequences about them. I kind of wish we didn't have them in a way.
I don't know.
But there's no going back.
Moore's law specifically deals with processors, honestly, I think. I don't think it specifically deals with... I don't think
technology.
It can... No.
But the argument is that... I think
it only connects to processors, because I don't think they could really measure innovation that well, because things come along like splitting the atom, there's things that come along that just fucking throw a monkey wrench.
Great point.
I don't know if there's a benefit that we're not quite aware of, because I think one of the things that's happening is people are way more aware of virtually everything. We can complain all day that we have less freedom in terms of our ability to joke around about things, and people are more restrictive with language, and all these things are true. But isn't it interesting that this is something that's happening, right? So there's a pushback. So we're feeling this rejection of certain types of words that we always like to use. We're feeling this rejection with certain behaviors that a lot of specifically men took advantage of. We're seeing this giant change. Well, why are we seeing this thing? This giant shift is because of social media and these technologies that we're talking about that create problems. So the question is, will this ship right itself? Are these corrections eventually going to lead to a better society? Are we going to be more understanding of each other once we get over these initial growing pains, which is what we're going through right now as a culture, as a society? Getting accustomed to these devices and the connectivity that they have. Are we going to get more responsible with them? Are we going to be nicer to each other through it? We're going to recognize as we get older that, hey, being shitty to someone on social media is just like being shitty to someone in person. Yeah. And we shouldn't support either thing.
Couldn't agree more.
And then we develop this sort of ethic.
Yeah, it's a really important set of questions you just asked about social media's effect on us. I would pinpoint one just for people to watch, this Intelligence Squared debate that you would love, because given your conversation that you have with people, the motion was, is Twitter specifically good for democracy, or does it create democracy?
Right.
And I was on the side of, it does. And I would cite examples like Egypt and even China and different places where people, in Iran, where people use Twitter to rise up. But the argument was, it's worse because on Twitter, a lie travels so fast, so rapidly, and it's so believable that it creates more damage about things that didn't happen and conspiracy theory than it also, it's a little of both, obviously, in terms of it creating democracy. You would think more speech on Twitter, it's equal, creates more democracy. How could you argue with that? Until you hear the other argument, which is fascinating about how much disinformation travels and how effective it is.
Well, my answer, I think, would be the same as my answer about technology, that I'm not necessarily sure it's all bad. And I think we're going through some growing pains, but I think we go through some growing pains with virtually every new changing thing.
That's the argument that economists make. You're talking about how it affects us, but the economic argument is interesting in terms of Is it Andrew Yang's argument? Is the rapid technological transformation in the planet going to lead to a jobless society?
Basic income, right? I don't know about that.
Jobless society, and economists have always argued what you're saying. Did the cotton gin put the farmer out? Did the horse put the car? All that, but the new argument that I hear from a lot of people who are a billion times smart, I'm not smart. All these people are, experts. They study this stuff. Is mostly, this is way different. The rapid change, and it's absolutely automation is going to kill economies around the world.
Well, the numbers are crazy. Now, stop and think about you, right? You're a smart guy who's had a successful radio show. You do stand-up.
This is going to hurt in the end.
No. You now are in this position where you have to adjust because you've been released from your job, right?
Yep.
But you have options. Now imagine you're a truck driver, and imagine that's all you've ever been, and you're 60 years old, and all of a sudden they come along and say, hey man, we have these self-driving electric trucks that never crash into anything. We don't need you anymore. And you don't have any skills. You don't have any other way to make a living. The angst that you feel right now, imagine that squared.
I could not agree more with you. My perspective is mine alone. We see things as we are, not as they are. And thinking about, and I always talk to this about my daughter.
Expression.
Yeah, my wife painted that.
It's a good expression.
Put it up on our wall. And so my experience, it's only relative to me, but you have to widen your perspective to understand some people are struggling to just get toilet paper and understanding that. And your point, though, about the truck driver, his skill set is narrow. And maybe his education, his grit, maybe he doesn't know how to network. He doesn't know how to use the internet. But he did a valuable job. And if he's going to lose his job at 63, I don't want to live in a society that worked hard. Guy worked hard his whole life. And by the way, he's paying more as a percentage of his taxes as a truck driver than most of these guys in the financial industry, which is a complete injustice.
Right.
Tax on your work. How much work you doing? But this guy should not have to go struggle and learn a new job. He's 63. Let him ride into the sunset. Give him a life right now. I'd pay for that.
That sounds
If you
romantic.
get screwed out of your job with technology, create a system, government, where we take care of those people.
It sounds romantic.
Yeah.
It sounds wonderful. But here's the problem with that. It doesn't make people feel good to just get a check. People feel like shit.
Absolutely. You want to have absolutely
They
agree.
get depressed.
That's
and by you saying ride off into the sunset, that's a euphemism for death. You're going to die. I mean, you're being cute.
For me, it's
you're
let me
making
go
it
be
like
my
the end of On Golden Pond, but it's not. That guy's going to shit himself and die.
No.
He's
Let him go
screaming.
fish and hunt.
Okay, that's great, but he's not going to be able to do that. He's going to be scratching and clawing to get through life. If you're getting $1,000 a month, that's not enough to exist.
Well, how do you feel about it, by the way? How do you feel about it?
I like it.
Yeah.
I like the idea.
Do you think it's realistic?
I'm open-minded. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. But I think we should have all possible options on the table because what's happened in our lifetime from 1994 with, give or take a few years, which is the invention of the commercial version of the internet, right? With all those AOL and all those things that people used, it basically all started sort of blossoming around 1994 with mass use.
I like your jazz hands.
But here we are in 2019.
Yeah.
So that's not that long. That's 25 fucking years, and the world is an unrecognizable place. People have devices in their pockets all the time. You're recording everything. Think about all the shit that Snowden figured out, that they're recording every goddamn phone call you make, every photo you take, every email you send. Everything's being recorded in a database to use against you someday in the future. We have no idea what 25 years from now is going to look like.
Agreed.
If we really believe that we don't need universal income, and then it turns out we do, we fucked up.
Oh, no, I think we
we should look at all options on the table. I don't know if it's the right option.
Yeah.
And I think humanists, people that understand human nature,
they need a sense of purpose.
People need
something. It's a great argument. I completely agree. Well made. And by the way, when you say, I'm open-minded about it, like that's the conversation. It has to keep being the conversation. You and I have gotten into a couple of arguments about little things, and it was awesome. I learned your point of view. That's the conversation, and the idea that somehow there's got to be a beat down and one person has to win and it has to be a competition.
Dunk on each other.
It's entertaining, but that's the problem.
But it's clicks and likes and it's valuable.
But what do you think about the idea that the automation is the main driving force putting people out of work, not this idea of immigration?
Well, I think some of it is true. And some of that mindless work is also soul-sucking. So you're saving someone from some assembly line job that makes them want to fucking shoot themselves. I think both those things are true.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're looking, again, for a binary answer here when it's a very nuanced issue filled with complexities and a lot of issues. and people like to have something to do. But the problem is sometimes people get beaten down by life. And again, they're 60x whatever it is years old, and they don't know what to do. And then they can't live the same lifestyle that they had when they had a job, because when they had a job, they were making $1,000 a week.
Yeah.
You know, they're making 50 grand a year, and now all of a sudden they're making $1,000 a month. So you can kind of live, but how do you live?
That's why I got to plug my podcast.
What?
You mean that you have to work?
From riding off into the sunset?
Yeah, I mean, like, so I can work. You want to work. You want to do work. I completely agree with that argument.
I don't have 3 jobs because it's healthy. I have 3 jobs because I'm crazy and because I need to stay busy, and also because I don't trust any one of these things to stick around. And
do you really not?
No, never have. Never have,
what,
never will.
Now? Come on, that's irrational.
Never have, never will. Come on. No, never have, never will.
What do you need?
I don't need anything. I don't think that way. I think now I'm doing it. While I can do it, do it. Do it and do the best you can. It's going to vary. Some days I suck. Some days I'm better. It's going to vary. Yeah. But do the best I can. Yeah. Keep doing it. But don't think it's going to last forever. And don't think it's going to go away either. Don't think about it at all. But it could go away. The internet could go away. Everything can go away.
Well, yeah.
People get pulled off of YouTube all the time. You get banned from things.
Right.
Things happen. Weird shifts take place. Some of them are illogical. You know, people get banned for saying the most ridiculous things.
What weird shifts that are illogical? I'm not following you.
What,
talking about internet bannings?
Sure.
Oh, yeah. I don't know.
Well, do you know who Megan, what is her name? Megan Murphy? She's a woman who's a TERF. I've talked about her too many times this week. Trans, exclusionary, radical feminist.
Don't know anything about it.
And she doesn't think that trans women are women and they should, I hope I'm not paraphrasing here. She doesn't think that they should vote and speak on women's issues, and that women are women who are biologically women, and then you have a trans woman who dominates women's issues. She thinks it's fucked up, and this is her perspective. She wrote on Twitter, "A man is never a woman." They told her you have to take it down, so she took a photo of it.
Twitter did?
They told her she has to take it down, so she took a photo of it and reposted that photo. She took a screenshot, reposted the screenshot, then they banned her for life. So that, to me,
I have no patience for that, and I had not heard about it. But
that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's not. No, how's that creating thought? Talk about it.
Progressive nonsense ideology.
No, you can label it. I mean, I think
that's what it is. That's what it is. It's ideology.
Yeah, but I think everybody has these. I don't want to hear that. I want to shut down speech. I don't like things.
Right, but
there are some people that are really consistent about it. I like to think I am.
But only social media companies have the power to decide whether or not a person gets to express themselves to an unlimited amount of people.
Well, it's an interesting.
And if you tell them that based on your ideology, which most people don't agree with, based on your ideology, they have said enough that something that merits you taking away their ability to express themselves, then I think you open up a real discussion, much like the Second Amendment discussion about the First Amendment. That what are we doing here? What is this, and what is free speech, and is this a town hall? And Jack Dorsey from Twitter believes it's a town hall. He thinks everyone should have the ability to express themselves, but that, like everything, is fucking complicated and messy.
It certainly is. Nadine Strawson, who I think used to be something at the ACLU, wrote a book about speech and about how in Germany you're not allowed to fly the swastika, and they have censorship on speech.
Yeah.
And that it's not effective for any of the outcomes that it's intended for.
They also make a lot of shit porn.
Is that right?
The
Germans do?
Yeah, they like that.
Is there any you wanted to plug, or?
I don't think I know any names, but for whatever reason, a lot of shit.
That's a thing?
Shit porn.
That's not a thing. I try to be very open-minded, but I don't understand. I'm not going to.
You don't have to understand it.
You know, I don't.
But you allow people to do it, right?
I would never allow people to think about. Of course, yeah. That's
a weird one, right?
A weird.
People want shit in people's mouths and smother themselves in shit and have sex with each other.
My instant reaction is, what went on? What's that about?
Oh, hell yeah!
Where's that? I want that story.
Yeah.
I want that script. How do you get to that? That sounds very abusive, and it sounds
for
like
sure.
It's a tough thing to talk. But no, the idea of censoring speech, it backfires.
It's just not healthy.
But I think people should be generally sensitive and not assholes at the same time.
But it's also the thing about someone saying something in print that you read on Twitter. It's like you can't even say anything back to them.
You make that
argument. You can make your own comment, but you're like, fuck, this is such a shitty way to talk.
It's poison.
Yeah, it's a shitty way to communicate.
Yeah.
I don't engage in it anymore. I'll post things up that I think are interesting.
How did you evolve on it?
Just decided it's not, these arguments are not, they make you riled up. They're not healthy. They're not. I
told my daughter, hold on, I'm arguing with someone on Twitter. Said it out loud. and I was like, oh, I'm the shittiest.
Yeah.
That's the shittiest thing that I could be doing.
I just think
right now.
It's also unmanageable when you get to a certain number of followers.
Yeah.
You just can't.
I haven't been there,
there's no way you can. And it's also people are just like, they're fucking in their cubicle. They're just trying to get a rise out of people. They're angry. They're bored. You can't expect that everybody's existing in the same vibration that you are.
I woke up to a tweet that said, "You're a pitiful person." I was like, oh.
Don't read that.
Good morning.
Bro, you're not. That guy's a liar.
No, I'm not.
Doesn't even know you. That's the thing.
It doesn't faze me at all, but it
shouldn't.
It doesn't. It is fascinating that someone would write such a thing.
It is, but
But I'll click on him and be like, I wonder what his deal is.
Oh.
Clearly he's projecting. And I'm worried about, I wonder what happened to that guy. And then you look at their picture and then you decide everything about their life. Do you ever look, like this is another reason I can't run for Congress, I think. Like I want to keep doing stand-up and I want to talk about things like, you ever look at a guy, like the guy I rented a car from yesterday at LAX, I thought about how much he jerks off for a little while.
I never think about that.
I will sometimes look at a guy and be like, I bet that guy is, and good for him and whatever, but that kind of, I don't know why I brought that up.
I'll think about that now. Every person I meet.
Shitting in the mouth, but
dude, I watched a video once of this lady.
This don't
lady
describe it.
Was really into.
She's gonna do it.
Guys shitting in her mouth, and she was speaking in German, and they was translating it to English, and she was talking about all of her experiences and when the first time a guy did it, and what kind of diet she likes a guy to follow when he shits in her mouth. And I'm like, okay, this is not pleasant. I'm not enjoying this, but honestly, and this is like, it's a kind of a dumb thing to talk about, right? But here's why it's not.
Human psychology?
That's a person. That was a baby.
Yes.
You have daughters.
Yes.
I have daughters.
Yes.
That was a baby.
You try not to fuck them up.
All of a sudden, this baby's 50, and she likes guys shitting in her mouth, and she wears like lingerie.
The bar for parenting should be somewhere, around no shitting on other people. Like then you've succeeded. And
but
by the way,
what if you get a lot of money for it? Like Robert, when was that dude's name? Robert Redford, Indecent Proposal with Demi Moore.
$1 million?
Yeah.
I want to put myself out there right now.
Yeah, shit on your chest for $1 million.
Please tweet me.
It's not that long.
How long
can a guy shit on you?
I've got a number. What's your number? What is your number?
Would you rather get shit on slowly every day as a clerk at Dunkin' Donuts, or one giant load on your chest that is like a really rough afternoon? Not even an afternoon. It's like an hour.
Hit me with a giant load.
You shower up.
I think everybody says hit me.
Bar. Rounds on me, boys. I just became a millionaire. Guy just shit on your chest.
It's like you're impending, or it's like saying that it's solid. What if it was like a diarrhea, Chipotle?
You do whatever you got to do. If someone,
a lot of variables,
bro. Whatever, let them shit all over you.
All
Splatter.
that salt water.
Just as long as you have goggles on and you get to close your mouth.
There's a lot of things.
Stain.
When those thought experiments come up, I'm always like, you wouldn't kiss a guy? Never. Told my dad this.
For how much money?
I was like, Dad, $1 million bucks.
What if
he goes,
dad?
No. I go, Dad, that's preposterous. That's ridiculous. You got a problem. And then he goes, no, I wouldn't do it. He calls back and he goes, he tells me who he names a guy, an old Italian. He's like, he goes, Paul Sorvino. Okay, that's my answer. $1 million bucks.
He'd make out with Paul Sorvino?
Everybody would. Because what would you do with that money? You could save other people's lives. You got to do it.
Or you could just buy a fur coat and start balling.
Either way, it's $1 million bucks.
Yeah.
No matter what that thought experiment is.
Fly private jets until the money runs out. Just go everywhere.
Party. I don't know if I'd do that.
Well, I wouldn't either, but I also wouldn't make out with Paul Sorvino. We're living in this fantasy world. Why does everything have to be ethical and moral? Just have a good goddamn time. White fur. Like snow leopard or some shit. Something exotic.
When you say that, like, what do you mean? Why does everything have to be ethical and moral? Like, you have your moral code.
Yeah, man, but I'm talking about making out with Paul Sorvino for $1 million bucks. That's free money.
Oh, yeah, don't get me wrong. Oh, yeah. Well,
right?
Everybody should.
You want.
Whoever you want, of course.
What if Paul says, listen, you want to make it 3? I'll shit right on your head. Just take a big, meaty meatball shit.
That's exactly how you imagine it would be.
Pasta Azul right on your fucking head. Bang.
Yeah.
Extra $2. $3 million bucks. You got a bad memory of making out with Paul Sorvino and then him shit on your head. But at the end of the day, the guy kept his promise and now you're rich.
Did you put me in the best mood I've been in 4 weeks, man?
Well, that's good. Let's end it with this then. When are you going to start your podcast? Where are people going to be able to see it? Like, what do you think?
Podcast is up.
It's up now.
Yeah, I can't say it's great. I hope you give me a chance. I'm just figuring it out. I put up one with that guest, Dr. Aaron Carroll, and I talked to Congressman Tim Ryan about running for Congress.
How many have you done so far?
I'm going to have a third one hopefully in the can tomorrow.
Excellent.
With Emily Atkin, who writes the heated newsletter about climate change.
Excellent.
But I'm taping a special, if I'm going to plug anything, in my hometown. I'm taping a very special stand-up special.
A very special stand-up special?
Very special. I'm going to do a very special thing.
What's it going to be for? Do you have a buyer for it? Or are you doing it on yourself?
No. I learned on this show what Andrew Schultz did, and I thought it was brilliant.
Oh, yeah. He's nailed it. Schultz is the master.
I texted him, and I was like, dude.
He's the master.
I admire what you did. We don't agree on like political, but that's the kind of thing. I'm like, dude. You know, he knows we don't agree. I'm like, that's brilliant. Good job. What
do you not agree with?
I don't know. But I mean, he was on the show and we just argue. About
politics?
I don't even remember.
Do you argue with everybody?
Yeah.
You're a little argumentative?
Yeah, it's not a good quality. I'm so, was I agitating?
No, you didn't agitate me. I like you. But you definitely were like, you have an argument mode that you fall into.
It's bad. It's my flaw. I hate it.
You can get out of that.
I'm working on it.
Yeah,
I think that you could see the
totally
change
surmountable
today.
Yeah.
But I mean, it goes back and forth. I don't want to defend it. I don't want to be defensive, but I feel really. I guess I'm very sensitive about a lot of things, and so I get passionate, and then I get that tone, and it's the worst thing in a relationship.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like it's not.
You don't want to be annoying. It's like what I said about podcasts. You know, that's a thing. Like people hearing your voice. It's not just your thoughts. Right. The way you express your thoughts.
Yeah.
It changes if you express them well in a nice way. It changes how people absorb those. It sounds so simplistic, but it's true.
I think when you talk about how to communicate on your podcast, it's often one of the best things you do. I've learned a lot from it. I've been listening to you talk about trying to understand people and listen to people that you don't disagree with, and I'm just sitting there beating myself up. I'm like, I got to be better at that. And the idea that I would get, that I was too argumentative today, it's like, oh man, I'm sorry. I never want to communicate that way. I don't think it's effective. I completely agree with your thoughts on it. It's completely ineffective.
Well, we get better at it.
I wonder how the pod affected me.
Probably got you a little jabberjaw.
What do you think?
That's when things changed, right? Got a little jabberjaw when the pot came out.
I started getting verbose.
Yeah,
I knew I shouldn't have touched it.
Yeah, you maybe shouldn't have the second hit. I only had one. I knew. This one you got to stay on the surfboard.
Good role modeling.
No, dude, it's fine. It's all good. It's like, but I think that if I've ever learned anything from doing this podcast, it's how to be better at talking to people.
I've learned from listening to this podcast how to be better.
Yeah. It's like there's an art to it. There's a dance.
I completely agree with you.
It's like dancing with someone. You're dancing with someone in a conversation.
They do condition you to be argumentative in live radio. Oh, the people who think they know.
Oh, the producers and shit.
Oh, the program directors.
I'm lucky. I never had a job.
Yeah, but I mean, it's toxic, and I don't. I agree with you. It's a toxic way to communicate. It's not effective. If you're trying to convince someone, don't do it like that.
No, imagine. I mean, imagine trying to go from being a cable news broadcaster on Fox TV like Shepard Smith, and then have him try to do a podcast. He's in that fake voice, no matter what. That fake voice is coming out. I mean, they're all doing it. It's like this is the
You're
climate.
absolutely right. You're very right about that, and that's why I think your podcast, by the way, is very. I think it's not the sexiest thing to talk about, but it's a huge part of why this discussion is so popular because people like a thoughtful, open-minded discussion. I mean, whether you agree,
like to think.
Yeah, agreed.
That's some people pretend they don't, but it's really because they're bored with what they have to do all day, so they don't want to think. But if you have some time and you're a curious person, you like to hear other people thinking too, and you like to hear someone who's thinking either in a way like, oh, I would think about that too, or in a way like you hadn't considered, like, oh, this guy's making me think, or this woman's got an idea that I never considered, or this guy's got a solution that I never thought was possible.
I try to measure. I think measuring intelligence is one great definition I've heard is by how good the questions are. Like, are you curious? I've tried to instill and engender in my daughters a sense of curiosity about everything rather than saying, you're going to do it because I'm your father and I said so. But like, I'm going to explain to you why that's, and try to, create critical thinking skills. And that's how I measure intelligence. How good are your questions? You're really curious. That's why the art of the interview, learning something, which is what I'm definitely that's what I did for 12 years in SiriusXM. That's what I want to do with the podcast, getting people who are a billion times smarter than me. I don't know anything but anything.
I think it's definitely going to help you too to be free of people's influence. Some production people and executives.
I worked with some talented people that contributed good things. But
also wondering when the day is going to come like it did, where they drop the fucking hatchet on you.
Don't need that ever again.
Worried about that. Have it over your head.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Done.
So what's the name of your podcast?
StandUP with Pete Dominick.
Oh, it's the same as your show. You fucking
my brand.
animal. Do you own that?
Yeah, they let me have it.
Serious can't
Yeah,
can't
they're
sue
like,
you?
they
Did you
were
get it in writing?
very gracious.
Talking a lot of shit about them. You get it in writing?
I did not talk any shit
I
about
talked
them.
a lot of shit about them.
I did not. I think what they did
I
for me
did.
was really great. But I think corporate media in general is the conversation. They're all kind of in the same system. I've worked and made money out of all of them. I'm excited to be independent, but I can't deny that they created a platform for a really thoughtful conversation for 12 years. I can't. It's.
You don't have to.
Yeah. So I'm in that. You know, it was a good life for me.
Beautiful.
So, and now it's on to the next thing.
Now it's on like Donkey Kong.
The Syracuse Funny Bone,
You're
November
moving.
29th and 30th.
Oh shit, PeteDominick.com. Right?
PeteDominick.com, StandUp@PeteDominick.com, Twitter, Instagram. Joe Rogan, I love you.
I love you too, buddy. Good luck.
I really admire you and what you've done here. Jamie, thank you. You guys are awesome.
Bye, everybody. Woo!
Shouldn't have taken a second hit.
No, it was good, man.
You sure?
What's the matter, James?